CN&CO Events proudly brings you InsureTalk Live. The time has come to close your laptop and join us live. Network with industry leaders and influencers. Engage and learn from A-list speakers. Interact with top exhibitors. Experience the best live entertainment and so much more. Register today. Visit cnandcoevents.com. InsureTalk Live, shaping the future together. Register today.
Good morning, everyone. It's the 19th of September. My name is Christelle Coleman, and I have the immense privilege of being your host for today. This is InsureTalk number 46. And if you are as fortunate as many, I know in the industry, you have a long weekend to look forward to tomorrow. School holidays, so if you are taking to the roads, please be safe. So today we have our headline partner, sponsor for today is Bright Insurance Company, and I want to tell you a little bit about Bright, and then we'll get into the various speakers for the day, and I also want to share some exciting news with you. So our conference theme is Navigating the New Era of Motor Theft and Cybercrime, Embracing Innovation and Protection in a Digital World. I'm particularly excited about the whole motor theft conversation because I do believe that most of us, if not everyone, are touched by the risk of motor theft in this industry. So just to get back to Bright Insurance Company, Southern Africa's premier proactive business risk specialist, through their unparalleled industry insights, proven expertise and foresight, Bright Insurance partners with customers and brokers to protect their businesses and improve their risk profiles. So instead of just being an insurer, Bright focuses on proactive risk management and sees themselves as a risk manager to a large degree. Fairfax is a holding company based in Toronto, Canada, which through its subsidiaries is primarily engaged in property and casualty insurance, and Bright is therefore also a subsidiary of Fairfax. Now, what I wanted to share with you today is it's September, it's the month of spring, and very soon we're going to be having our live event in Johannesburg. InsureTalk Live will be on the 14th of November. The 14th of November. We were going to have it on this day today, but it's been changed to the 14th of November. It's an in-person event, but don't worry, for those of you joining us around the digital table, you will be able to join online as well. And I do hear from the producers that we have a few more tickets available at about 850 Rand. So you'll be there for the conference to be presented in person, afterwards some snacks, some networking, and you'll be able to actually meet everyone in person. It's not a huge conference, so seats are limited. So please do go online. I know that the producers will pop the link into the chat, and please do go online and book your tickets. Now, our first speaker of the day is someone that I really do rate very highly. David Chow, I think, is one of the smartest people in our industry. I've had the privilege of spending some time with David recently, and he's going to talk to us on the topic of the evolving landscape of motor theft, challenges and opportunities, and that's the one that excites me. So I'll tell you briefly about David. He joined Bright, which is the company that he still works for today and who is our headline event sponsor, as a learner at the age of 18, and he now has over 13 years of experience specializing in engineering insurance. He's got a BCom honors and many other leadership qualifications, and that's where we have a touch point, because David was also president of the Insurance Institute of the Western Cape. And I remember my tenure as the president of the Institute of the Western Cape many years ago. He served from 2020 to 2022. So, David, we look forward to your chat to us on the evolving landscape of motor theft.
Thank you so much, Christelle. Welcome, everyone. Good morning. So I just wanted to just share my screen quickly around my presentation, and then we'll kick it off. Okay. So welcome everyone. Yeah, it's a really privilege to be able to present to you guys today. Christelle, thank you so much for that great introduction. I really appreciate it. I hope everyone can take this knowledge today and use it. One day if needs be in your daily operations, and hopefully expand it to our clients. So I believe. I strongly believe in education. I strongly believe in building a strong network so that we can, kind of share that information, because information is good. So today I'm going to be talking around the motor theft claims, more specifically on the motor side of things and vehicles. So my topic today is Allen key to AI, basically looking at the conventional state going into the technological state, and also looking from a South African perspective, and also like a international context. So hopefully this will bring some great insight. So Christelle has mentioned around Bright in terms of who we are and what we do. We are a proactive business risk insurance specialist. We also provide asset protection with expertise. So basically, in a nutshell, we look for foresight in terms of our business and our risks for our clients, and ensure that our clients have the best protection from a expertise point of view. Right, going straight into it. If there's any questions, sorry, I just wanted to start off with that. If there are any questions, please drop it in the Q&A session. In the Q&A thing, I think it's on the right side of the panel. If you have any questions, drop it in there. What I'll do is I'll then answer it at the end, or I'll respond to it. And just from a timing point of view, I think it'll be good. But please feel free to ask questions at any given time. I will then answer it at the end of the session. So rise in vehicle thefts, more specifically in South Africa. So crime basically continues to increase at an alarming rate, which means what is it driven by? Socioeconomic issues, right? So if our socioeconomic issues like poverty and unemployment rate gets increased throughout the year, what happens? Generally, crime, theft, things increases. It's got a domino effect in terms of where our socioeconomic issues are happening. So this then, from 2022 to 2023, SAPS reported over 128,000 hijackings. So that's quite significant if you look at the level of hijackings happening in post-COVID, basically. In our South African context, that it's an alarming rate, because it just continues increasing. And I'll show you guys a little bit more of that trend a bit later as I go into the presentation. The tracking companies have seen a 12 to 18% increase in theft. So that's about a 6% difference increase in the tracking side of things. Now, just keep in mind, these are the insured vehicles that has tracking or tracking trackers attached to their vehicles. So if they can already see a 6% increase in their stats, and those are for insured vehicles, what is the rest of the country looking like? So I'm just wanted to paint that picture in terms of the significance of the theft and the crime happening in South Africa. Two key regions where it's constantly happening: KZN and Gauteng, around the car thefts and the hijacking areas. Why? Well, it's probably because it's so close to the northern border. What happens is a lot of times the vehicles are being stolen, and they obviously are shipped out to the neighboring countries. And I'll show you some stats around that too, in terms of how much and value are being shipped out, just to showcase in terms of what impact it's happening in our South African GDP. From this point, the type of vehicles being recorded in terms of the hijackings. This is just January to March in 2023 data. Your sedans, obviously coupes, are the highest, probably because majority of South Africans are driving in that space. So obviously the number would be higher, but also ease of access, right? So it is a lot more complicated to hack into a truck and steal a truck than hack into a sedan. or VW Polo. Those type of vehicles are a little bit easier to kind of hijack and steal from that perspective. So yeah, quite a huge contrast in terms of your general trailers, industrial machineries like generators being attached to trailers and things like that, and then coming down straight into the sedan space, significant amount of numbers. When we look at the trend over the 3 months, so just January again, January to March 2022 versus 2023, so year-on-year comparisons, right? We look at seasonal rates. So what I want you guys to focus on, I know it looks quite data and very analytical, but if you see you can kind of see a nice trend going up into March. And this is explaining the seasonal hijacking. So what's happening is that you can have a normal standard year running almost quite 1,700 vehicles being stolen and an average rate, and then it spikes up to your seasonal ratings where it's going into the Easter months, and then it comes down again, starts normalizing again. So this is just to explain in terms of where the country is being impacted mostly and why our countries, what's happening with the carjackings in South Africa from that perspective. So when we look at South Africa in terms of the numbers and how it's impacting our pockets, post-COVID, the data was gathered. 5,100 cars were hijacked between that period, Jan to March 2023, which is quite significant from that space. Sorry, this data was also gathered from the South African Crime Bureau or South African Insurance Crime Bureau, and that's how it's validated through that. 57 vehicles stolen per day on average, almost 60 vehicles per day. 37,400 vehicles are stolen for the entire year of 2022-2023, which is quite significant from that perspective. So when we talk about the actual value, the amount, the rand value, how does insurers help, and how does the economic impact from a GDP point of view are impacted, as well as a socioeconomic or driven by socioeconomic issues? 8.5 billion rand is stolen, hijacked per annum. So that hits, and that is being recorded from an insurance perspective. All the money, from what we insure. So all the insurance companies being impacted by 8.5 million per annum is quite significant. And this tells you a story. It tells you that the insurance companies are actually, I would call them heroes in our space, because if we aren't able to reestablish our country back into a normalized state, if insurance companies can't give back to the consumer of 8.5 billion, what happens is then the state will need to have to fund the 8.5 billion. Where do we get that money from? We don't know, and that's why it's so critical for insurance companies to still remain strong, premiums still to remain strong, and ensure that we drive, sustainable premiums for our clients as well, because at the end of the day, that's where it's going, in terms of the rand value. So it's quite a significant impact. Peak time in terms of where it was recorded from 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock. It's quite obvious because of the peak hour traffic, in terms of what's happening around there. Generally, hijacks happen as in transit, and I've witnessed actually a few myself, in the Gauteng area where I stayed for many of my years, where I've actually witnessed a lot of hijackings taking place during those hours. So I can validate that myself from a personal level. But yes, it happens during daylight, basically, which is quite, concern, generally, because you would think that these things generally happen after, in terms of the nighttime periods. 30 to 40% go cross border. So remember, I was speaking to you about the northern border, and that's generally what happens around KZN and Gauteng being so close to there. It has a impact about taking, the vehicles to cross border. It's easier for them to kind of deregister, take it apart, take it to chop shops, dismantle it completely and really use the parts. So that's basically what's happening around that 8.5 billion being stolen. What I want to do is I want to break down that 8.5 billion now. So keep in mind, the 8.5 billion is broken into two categories. The first category being the 4.9 billion being taken cross-border and the 3.1 billion being in South Africa, and also potentially cloned vehicles. So in other words, registered in, falsifying information to insurance companies, and basically coming up with a BMW 3 Series that is actually not supposed to, that used to be there, but it's actually been taken apart completely. So recycling, the information constantly, re-registering, recycling, and that's causing massive impact in insurance company space, in our loss ratios, and why the motor book is so heavy on claims. And that's why motor books are generally run at such a significant percentage in terms of loss ratios, because of the significant increase in theft claims. So just looking at those two numbers, 4.9 billion being taken cross borders, again, remember when I said around 40% being taken across, it's quite significant. It is quite a large amount being taken outside of the country. What happens then? It damages the GDP, it damages the insurance companies, it damages South Africans' economic state, because we are not taking money outside of South Africa. They're recycling that money there in the northern African borders, and that's a key issue that we're suffering with in our South African state. When we look at what actually ends up in chop shops, so 500 million rand ends up in chop shops, and that's when they take it apart, dismantle it, and basically use the parts. So why is this number so important in our space? Well, let me tell you, when you go to an OEM, generally it's expensive, right? To replace a door panel or replace, a part in a vehicle, because it's so expensive, because it's imported, or the OEM are just jacking up the prices because it's so expensive. That's why majority of the cars are being written off, because a bumper these days will cost you more than the vehicle's market value. And when that happens, they generally just write it off. So what happens is then these chop shops are made up, and they're obviously reselling these parts at a very, very small ratio. And why is this working in South Africa? Well, another thing that I wanted to say is that because of our socioeconomic issues in South Africa around poverty, around unaffordability, unemployment, people aren't taking out insurance. So when they have accidents and they need to replace a bumper, they obviously go to these cheap places to replace it. Why not? Because at the end of the day, if it's going to cost you 10% of what an OEM is going to charge, you're going to go to the cheaper solution because of your affordability level. And if you look at the South African stats from an unemployment and poverty level, it is quite high. So that is why it's 500 million rand industry being driven by that, which is quite significant in terms of an industry itself. So moving along, how does this impact internationally? So South Africa is not just, it's not just alone, and it's suffering with this kind of same issue, same issues. Because again, a lot of us can complain and say, yeah, South Africa, this is where it's going, and the crime stats and the unemployment stats and all this. However, if we in contrast compare ourselves to an international market like London, we also can see that 98,000 stolen vehicles are reported in London per annum. On average, a vehicle is stolen every 5 minutes in the UK. So just putting it out there in terms of what the significant damage is to their GDP and the insurance companies, we can now compare and contrast how it looks like. Land Rover has been reported to be the most coveted vehicle. Why? Because it's actually easy to break into Land Rovers. It's not as complicated as what one would think, and also it's becoming actually an uninsurable risk in the London markets. So they generally identify Land Rovers as a separate motor risk, and they would rate it differently, and they would apply different excesses and apply different restrictions on their policy wordings because of being such a high risk entity itself. On average, the cost of second-hand vehicle rose to £18,000, which is approximately 400,000 rand in the second-hand vehicle state. So, just some numbers in terms of what they're looking at versus what we're looking at from that perspective. So, impact of vehicle theft. So this is basically around how can we mitigate, how can we manage the claims and risk management around vehicle theft. So approximately 70% of vehicles are uninsured. So remember when I said about the unemployment rates, the affordability, the socioeconomic issues, this actually explains a nice story. It tells you that 30% of that is actually insured. And that is hitting the insurance companies, and that's where we're paying out. 70% of those vehicles not being insured, still insurance companies' problem. Why? Liability cases, third-party liability. if they don't insure their vehicles and we still damage, or our clients still damage the vehicles, we still have to pay. To get that recovery, another story, right? How can you recover from someone that can't actually afford to repay you? Recovery process, and a lot of people in the industry will tell you it's a task. Just to recover money from clients is difficult, to try and recover your damaged goods and things like that. It's very difficult to get that money back. And what happens then is that we then increase our premiums. So naturally, because of the increase of the book of motor vehicle thefts happening and the book of business that's happening in our industry, we then actually increase the premiums. We do that, and we still apply punitive costings against the policies as well. So obviously, sometimes double trackers are being imposed. Restrictions comes in around certain hours being driven. All those kind of like underwriting criteria starts becoming a lot more aggressive because insurance companies are trying to control the book to make it run a little bit more sustainable, right? We want to give back to the consumer. We want to ensure that the consumer gets what they pay for. But in order for us to do that, is that we need to ensure that we get the right premiums and try and drive it in a sustainable manner. When we compare the South African context versus the Canadian context, we can see that Canada is charging between 25 to 50% in premiums year on year. Why are they doing that? Well, firstly, parts, right? Parts are being aggressively increased. Parts are being more expensive in the industry these days. I mean, on the construction side, I know from a plant or risk perspective, those parts already are increasing from 25 to 35 to 40% on parts itself. And from a vehicle perspective, it's also quite aggressive. So when you look at these kind of costs of parts and partial losses coming through and cars being written off, it's because of that. So what happens is that we're going to need to increase our premiums. We're going to try and rewrite the policy to make a sustainable profit out of it, because at the end of the day, it's all about, again, giving back to your clients and making sure that we align with our coverage. Canada paid about 1 billion rand in auto theft claims in 2022. So that explains why they're increasing it by 50% in terms of the ratings, because they are being damaged, in terms of the insurance companies, in terms of the economic state. So henceforth, they have to apply the right premiums to the right risks. Canadian insurance implemented a $500 high theft vehicle surcharge. So South African conditions, we would apply, double theft excess, or we would apply double trackers being implemented and so forth. What Canadian insurers have been doing is they've been applying a theft surcharge, just, additional over and above your excess. So, these things are coming in play because clients can't afford premiums. I mean, it becomes to a point where what is enough premium, right? Where do you draw the line for enough premium? And sometimes you can't. So what do? You're going to look at underwriting criteria, excesses, trackers, and policy winning placements. So those things are so important when we look at from an insurance perspective. So moving forward, when we look at the vehicle theft in terms of how it's done. Okay, so conventional kind of cases, the Allen key, Slim Jim in the window, very classic cases that you'll see in videos, and I'm sure some of my colleagues will actually share some of that thing in terms of how, where, conventional theft has happened to where it's going, in terms of theft, right? In terms of future theft, technological theft, and so forth. So it's quite, these are just general examples in terms of how cars were stolen before. Now it's easy. So now syndicates are happening. So what you can actually do now is you can go to Takealot. You can pay 10,000 Rand for like a device that will basically jams the signal, and basically our customers' vehicles are then being jammed, and you thinking you're locking your car, meanwhile you're not. This can happen in the span of 2 minutes, where vehicles are parked or come to your vehicle, they jam it, and clients are basically left carless because of the fact that cars can get stolen so quickly without forcible and violent entry, without anything actually happening or any scene. This can happen at any time of day. These kind of cases actually happened in my personal capacity as well, where I've seen the video of my brother's car being stolen in a shopping center in the middle of the daylight. I think it was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So these syndicates, as I would like to, or as we call them, are becoming a lot more smarter. They're using technology to benefit themselves. They're using other vehicles, unmarked vehicles that are just generally used. You think that that's just another vehicle behind you, or whatever. And that's what's happening now in terms of innovation around theft. And they really, that's how they get into the vehicles. So moving forward in terms of where they steal it. So again, as I mentioned, the shopping centers, they like to do it at the garage these days, or at the petrol filling stations, in open daylight. Sometimes in the morning, you don't know, but it just happens. It's so seamless. And here's just a few examples in terms of what can happen. So they could key clone your key, so they can obviously wipe your kind of clone your data using another device, and they basically unlock your vehicle. Majority of the vehicles these days, or the modern vehicles, are keyless, and they come with just a general remote setup, and that's easy to clone. So with technology and technology improving, we noticed that the impact of this is actually, it's causing more damage, because before, um, we could always, put, like a gear lock and and a steering wheel lock and things like that, and protect your vehicle from theft. Now everything is so automatic. When you lock your steering, it locks, and you think it's safe. But as soon as somebody has a key that basically has the same code as your key, it can basically unlock all those things at one seamless way. So again, something very, very personal to me that happened 2 weeks ago, actually, where they actually unlocked my vehicle very, very close to my house, and actually got into my vehicle, stole everything, and then left. I did not know that this happened until I saw that all my stuff inside the vehicle has been taken out. So these things happen, and it's real in our world. It doesn't matter where you sit, and that's why we should just be careful and try and apply more risk management to our own personal items. Top vehicles being stolen. So as you guys can see, a nice trend: Toyota, VW, Toyota, VW. So very, very easy vehicles to break in. Very common vehicles on the road. I guess that's why it's so easy. And it's just easier, technology to basically break in and basically steal. So these are the common vehicles being stolen. And I guess that's why the underwriting criteria is a lot more aggressive when being applied around vehicle theft. So again, something just to consider when buying a vehicle, and also just consider, being on the road when you drive these vehicles, because again, it's very, very high risk commodities at the moment. So what is the problem around cars being stolen? Um, Basically technology, as I said. So obviously technology being a lot more aggressive, and it's changing, and the mere fact that people have access on Takealot and access on all these channels that they can go and buy these items to basically jam and get access to it is actually quite quite scary, because that just shows you that a syndicate can start tomorrow. It's not something that just happens. It can happen overnight, basically. Advancement enhancements, insider trading. So what happens is that people might be working for tracking companies. They leave. Now they know how to disable the trackers from the vehicles. So what insurance companies are now doing is that we're applying like a double tracking device clause onto the policies, where now, even if the guy knows how to remove the one, at least it gives the insurance company some kind of comfort that they won't remove the other tracker. Otherwise, the tracking point is not. It's kind of like useless. How does this impact the clients, though? Because now we're charging premium, we're telling them they need to have double tracking, we're telling them that you need to do all these risk mitigations so that you can enjoy cover. But remember when I said around the unemployment rate and around the GDP and around the poverty levels, how do these people then afford insurance or things like that? So we as insurance companies need to become more innovative around the affordability points. And I think that is so critical because of the way technology and the way things are happening in South Africa. It's very, very important that we look at how we underwrite and how can we help our clients a bit more from an affordability point of view. Henceforth, 70% only not being insured and rather taking the risk on their own. Again, like I said, syndicates, foreign, local, are being channeled. So it's not just local syndicates, but foreign syndicates being involved in this whole operations. And that's what's happening at the moment. So electric vehicles, are they a lesser risk? I've got 5 minutes left, so I just want to make sure that I get my story here. So electric vehicles. So it's obviously, they actually are a lesser risk because they are less appealing, right? So it's very difficult for, kind of like for these syndicates to understand how these electric vehicles work, understand the complexities of the electric vehicles. Yes, it's still hackable. Yes, it's still access to a lot of key technological advances that could be easily tracked and hacked. But because it's so advanced, it is less appeal for them to steal. So they want to go for the simpler kind of vehicles like the VW Polos and so forth, because it is easier to kind of hack and steal and also jam a lot easier. Just an example of what's been stolen in 2023, the Kia Niro. Is the most common, obviously, electric vehicle being stolen. As we go on throughout the years, you'll start seeing a more likable trend around the electric vehicles being stolen a lot more often. As I said, the effects of hijack and theft on insurance company policies, increased premiums, less vehicles being insured because of the unaffordability rate, increased restrictions, additional theft protection systems. So all these things are adding up, to the client's pocket. And again, that's why a lot of times consumers see us as as this, like, kind of not hero, but like the opposite of kind of like a villain, because we're just taking money from them, and that's not the case. We're actually putting back money back into the state, and that's why I mentioned that 8 billion rand impact of what we do as insurance companies. Just lastly, I think industry considerations that we're doing: 2 tracking system, again, like I said, steering wheel locks still being applied, gear locks still needs alarm systems. And I think the last one that I just wanted to make and maybe close off on this entire session today is client education. I think being personally involved in these kind of kind of sophisticated theft cases, I do see that education is important, ensuring that you are making sure that you leave your vehicle on before you stop, watching your surroundings, watch if people are following you when you're driving, leave a little bit of a space when you're stopping at robots. All these things are so important in preventing hijackings and trauma, on our clients. So I think, in a nutshell, I wanted to share this story with you guys today, because it is very impactful of how it's impacting our GDP, how it's impacting our insurance company motor book, and why insurance premiums are increasing every single year because of the impact of claims. So, on that note, I would like to thank you and hand over back to Christelle. I really appreciate your time, and thank you again. Please leave any Q&A questions, and I will answer it accordingly. Thank you, everyone.
And as I said, one of the smartest young people in our industry, young leaders, David. David Charles, thank you so much. That was very, very insightful. And in keeping with the theme of motor insurance, we're always very excited to have the individuals from the Insurance Crime Bureau present here on InsureTalk. And today we have Lawrence Liebenberg. Lawrence is going to talk to us about theft of motor vehicles, hacksaw or hacking. And of course, the Insurance Crime Bureau have very interesting insights. He's head of non-life operations at the Insurance Crime Bureau. He joined the SAP in 1983, and he started his career investigating vehicle crime already in 1989 at the Vehicle Theft Unit. He became the commander of a Vehicle Crime Investigative Unit in 1992. This is even before we started seeing that wave of hijackings and car thefts that came towards the latter part of the 90s. From 2004 until joining the Insurance Crime Bureau in 2012, he was responsible for the investigation of COVID and overt project investigations on vehicle crime in Gauteng. And I have to say, I don't believe there is a better speaker on this topic than Lawrence. And we will be hearing about theft of motor vehicles, hacksaw or hacking. Thank you. Over to you, Lawrence.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm going to quickly just show my face. And for those of you that don't know me, quickly, just so that you can see it. There's my ugly old face. And now that you've seen it, I will can attack my own face for you, and then we'll go over into the session. So yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you and represent the Insurance Crime Bureau in this session. So thank you very much. In case so, just want to see if you can see my see my screen.
We can see your screen.
Okay. Okay. David has alluded to the technology that moved on in the theft of motor vehicles. And at the Insurance Crime Bureau, our main aim is to address organized crime impacting on the insurance industry. Therefore, we concentrate a lot on vehicle crime per se. But today, I'm not going to talk about hijacking, which is a topic on its own, and the reasons and all the aspects to hijacking. I'm going to talk about theft of motor vehicles. Where did we come from, or where we're going? What are we currently seeing? First, when we talk about vehicle theft, the first thing that you need to do as a criminal is that you need to defeat the ignition and the security system of such a vehicle. Your first option is to get the key that we call the fob these days, because it's not a key like we used to know if we used to drive an old Datsun 1400 bakkie. So if you need the key, what we see currently is a lot of pickpocketing cases being reported, especially ladies, handbags in the shopping trolley, in that little space in front where the children is supposed to sit. Their bags are in there. The syndicates follow them and they pickpocket their keys out of their purses and their big bags that they always carry around. And then they just go outside and flick until they get the car that they want to take. But yeah, and then also impersonation at car washes, at service providers, all of that. So it's other ways to get the real key or the real fob. But if you are a professional car thief, then you need to find the vulnerability of a vehicle and then attack it in the most effective way possible. Now, vehicle technology and security has evolved immensely, with the main focus, the comfort and the usability of that vehicle for the driver and the driver experience. So in essence, our vehicles became integrated with the Internet of Things. And it's something like a normal extension of our lives these days. Now, vehicles are managed by computer networks, as with normal networks, are vulnerable to hacking. Now, hacking, just to refresh your memory, is the act of identifying and then exploiting the weakness in a computer system. So first of all, I want you to stop thinking of a vehicle as just 4 wheels and a steering wheel. You must start thinking of a vehicle as a part of the Internet of Things. Now, a special weakness for vehicles are the keyless entry. Now, if we look at what we were confronted with, say in 2010, to about 2015, we had the hard entries into the vehicles. If you look at the device that we had here, you can see this is a Toyota Hilux on the old D4D. And these were very popular vehicles at one stage. And to get through to the security system, they had to do physical breaking of certain things. They had to force open the bonnet to get to the alarm, to silence the alarm. They had to take out the locks. And then we had this high-end technology device that the car thieves used to call a gone in 60 seconds, a key maker. And with that, they would code new keys to the vehicle. But this was a very high entry, a high level of force being used to gain entry into the vehicles. Now, in my previous life, as was alluded to, I was in the vehicle crime investigation. One of the biggest chop shops that we ever had to deal with was on the old Golden Highway. Now there, I can tell you, we found thousands of steering wheels where the steering wheels were cut through, bent open to remove the old steering locks. That was, the method of the time was a hacksaw. You had to hacksaw through that steering metal and remove that device from getting away with that car. Now let's look at today. Now, the videos I'm going to show to you, I don't want to discuss a lot of stats. At the Insurance Crime Bureau, we keep thorough stats like everybody. But there's a saying in law enforcement that says, we don't fight crime, but we certainly do record it. But in our instance, we would like to turn that stats into intelligence and then work on it. So what I'm going to show to you now is a couple of videos of free modus operandi, how to steal vehicles these days by hacking into the vulnerability of the computer systems into those vehicles. Now, in this video, you will see this device that I've got here on the left-hand side is a Lonsdorf 500. Now, this is not an illegal device. This is a device being used by locksmiths to code a new key for you for your vehicle if you lose your vehicle. Unfortunately, the car thieves got hold of it and they make misuse of it. a lot of mischief with this device. Now, they don't even need a key. This orange little device was looking like an alarm remote. They hang it around their neck. That is emulating the fob or the key for your vehicle. This video will show how the suspects break the window. They then lean into the vehicle. They rip out the intruder sensor so that they don't make a noise and an alarm. They will then eliminate the intruder sensor. They will get into the vehicle. You will see a second suspect passing on the Lonsdorff 500. That will go into the OBD port underneath the steering wheel, and they will code that little orange device as if it is now the new key for the vehicle, and they will be able to drive off. This is especially prevalent on your keyless entry vehicles. What we experience is that the suspects make use of rental vehicles when they commit these crimes. The rental vehicles are fitted with false number plates so that they cannot be traced. But the reason for it is they don't use a stolen vehicle because on their way to commit the crimes, they can already be arrested for that stolen vehicle. They don't want to use their own vehicles because that can be asset forfeited if they are arrested. A rental vehicle and a false number plate is a slap on the finger, and that's mitigating their risk. So rental vehicles used a lot, and what they will do is they will even claim for fake accidents and get the rental vehicles. In that sense, the insurance industry is paying for those rentals to commit crimes, because those rentals are then rented out for criminals. You will then see that this guy never opened this door. He still had the hard entry by breaking the window. We now experience that they take a drill and they drill at certain points in the vehicle and then open that vehicle without the intruder alarm going off. Like I said, with these criminals like to use the rental vehicles, we started monitoring that very same team in that video footage. And we then determined that they swapped that vehicle for a Hyundai H1 minibus to get more suspects in it. It's more comfortable. And what we then did is we physically monitored them, and we saw them going from Soweto to Kagiso. From Kagiso, they went into Sunwood Park in Boksburg. From there, they were scouting for possible vehicles to steal. From there, they went to Brakpan. From Brakpan, they went to Heidelberg. From Heidelberg, they came back to Brakpan, and this is where law enforcement intercepted them. And you can see all the devices that they had with them. The devices that I want to allude to is this Lonsdorff 500. Here you can see that device. And then also all the tools of a trade. But what is also important is the tracking devices, the jamming devices for the tracking signals. So what you see here is a very potent jammer. This jammer is fitted into the tub, and then at the bottom of the tub, they've got like ice blocks and towels to keep it cold and prevent it from overheating. You will also see that there's this computer fans that's put on top so that it can prevent it from overheating, because if it overheats, then it will stop the functionality of a jammer. Then you also see the small military grade here, this little jammer at the back, that one usually goes in the vehicle that is being stolen. A lot of the devices for defeating the ignitions, as was alluded, can be bought online. Some of these devices are legal to get into South Africa, but some of them are straight legal devices. And that is being used by the syndicates. Some of the devices are actually only available on the dark web. And these guys know how to get them. We find them traveling to the old Eastern Bloc countries like Poland and Ukraine, and going to fetch and then also do their research and get the newest and latest devices that are being developed in that part of the world. So that the first scenario that I gave was what we call a total key loss. In that matter, they emulated a total key loss for your vehicle, and they coded a new fob, that little orange device, that they coded as the new key fob for that vehicle. So they emulate a total key loss for that vehicle. Now, in our environment, we are always confronted by handovers. People that are handing over their vehicles to the suspects, and then we say, and they then claim for insurance. It's a reality that we are confronted daily with in the insurance industry, and that's why we appoint loss adjusters to verify and validate that claim. Now, in this instance, I'm going to play this video for you, and here you can see the vehicle that is going to be stolen and reported, and you can think for yourself, if this is a handover or is it a theft. And usually it is the loss adjuster will obtain the video footage where the vehicle was stolen. And if we look at the speed with which the suspect steals this vehicle, most probably a lot of people will think this is a handover. And there the vehicle goes. But what I would like to play it again. And this time I would like to point out the following to you. Here's the victim and the vehicle. Here is one of hyenas that's following him. And here is the other hyena that is following. They are closing in on the prey, and they've been following this victim for a while. What's going to happen is that Land Cruiser is keyless. The minute you see the mirrors closing in, the vehicle is locked. The key, the fob, is emanating a weak signal to find the vehicle all the time. It finds all of these vehicles because it is responding to those vehicles, but it doesn't recognize the vehicle. Look at this suspect now suddenly following the victim. He's got a backpack, and in that backpack is the relay device. What they're going to do is they boost the signal from the fob to the door through that devices, and thereby you can start the vehicle without having the fob in the designated range for that model. Here you can see that guy running back, and in fact, this is what we call a relay attack. So they relay the signal from the fob through a device to another device to the door, and that extends the range of that keyless entry for you. That is what we call a relay device. The device looks similar like this. This is they call it a new key repeater. You can order this one online, and you can see the amount for it is $13,254, and you can have it. So this is what I will later show you the actual devices that we've recovered. Now that we know how they work, now we can have a look at this video, and you will see, and now it will be familiar for you. What you will find is the victim coming in. He will park here. You will find one of the suspect vehicles coming there. In this case, they used 3 vehicles. One vehicle remains behind, actually, to monitor the movement of a complainant if he comes out. Here is the victim vehicle. Here is the first hyena. There's the second hyena, the observer. And then what I would like you to do is look at this gentleman getting out here immediately. He's got this device in that laptop bag there. Look at how he loiters. He's on the phone, he's talking to his partners must come, and here they come in. Usually, in your videos, you will see they park one bay, leaving a space for this other culprit that is going to assist. Here is the bigger portion of a device is in here. Now look at the mirrors, it's closing, the vehicle is locked, and look at this suspect now starting to follow the victim. He is going to boost that signal now. Now suspect 2 is getting out of the other IISA vehicle, and he is going to, you will see the other device, the smaller device in his hand, is boosting the signal, and he is in the Prado, and the Prado is gone. Now, this video is just to show the role of the person that is doing the relaying. And if you look at this video, you will see, there you see the suspect vehicle passing. The victim in this case has parked to the right. You will see the victim coming in to his office. There's the suspect behind him. And you could see the other suspect running past to get to that vehicle with the other device. Look at this suspect. He is just boosting the signal, and job done, vehicle taken. Now, we've discussed now two basically methods. The one is a total key loss. That's emulating as if you've lost all the keys. This one is a relay attack where we boost the signal and we use the vulnerability of a keyless entry. In the next video, I want you to have a look at this. It's not going to be a breaking of a window and getting into the vehicle and then accessing the computer system of a vehicle through the OBD port under the steering wheel. It's not a relay attack because the suspects are coming in later. The vehicle is already parked. They scouted for the vehicle. They then find the vehicle parked in the street. I want you to maybe time on your own from when the suspects park next to the vehicle till they drive off with the vehicle. From when they get out of the vehicle at the back. And in this case, please look at the side mirrors. The minute the side mirrors opens, it also means that the vehicle has started. Where the side mirrors open, it's their car. So the question is, what did they do here? Now, to understand what they are doing, they are actually hacking into the car. Now, all vehicles, if you think about the functionality that you've got in your vehicle, be it a baseline model or be it one of the most expensive new Prados or whatever you've got that you drive, you will see that the technology that you've got in your vehicle, old vehicles had end-to-end cabling. You had a starter motor, you had an alternator, you had relays in that vehicle, and you had a lot of cabling in that vehicle, and all the functions were basic. For all the functionality that you've got now in your vehicle, you cannot have that cable. You will need a ESCOM line to get all the functionality if it was end-to-end cabling in that vehicle. For that, the standard being used currently in all vehicles with new technology is what we call a controller area network. Now, that controller area network is like on this diagram. is the red portion that we've got here. The controller area network consists of what they call a CAN high and a CAN low. Now, those are the main bus for that network, computer network in your vehicle. The majority of vehicles, even your baseline vehicles like an entry-level Ford Figo, will have up to 50 ECUs to perform different functions. Now, if you say, for example, put up the volume of your vehicle, of your radio on your steering wheel, it happens immediately. But what it does, that controller module in your steering wheel will send a signal, a pulse, onto the main bus, and that main bus then delivers it to the correct other module that will then perform the transaction on the radio, what you requested. So what happens is, if you can hack into the bus, you can then gain access to that vehicle's computer network. You don't even have to get inside the vehicle, because vehicles have got a vulnerability even on the outside of a vehicle. Now, in this case, with the Prado and the Lexus, that weakness is at the left front of the headlight left. On the Toyota, left. On the Lexus, left and right. What you then, those OB, that CAN bus, you can access it at that headlight. By going into that access and then emulating an emergency start with an emergency start device, you emulate that the vehicle must now perform an emergency start, and then the vehicle will open and it will start automatically as if in an emergency mode. The device that you can use, let's call it the normal standard device that you can get, and you are free to go and maybe Google www.cotgrabber.club, and you will even find that you will get a PDF document once you buy this device that will then show you how to utilize it on a Citroen, on a VW, how to utilize it on any vehicle and make that you can think of. What you see on the road, and maybe you might think, but why are we only showing Toyota products here? If you look at the best sellers, or equates to your best stealers. That's as easy as that. The market that these guys want to tap in is the market of popular vehicles and vehicles that are swinged very easily. In this case, here you can see on a Lexus that was recovered, where the bumper is opened. Here you can see the CAN high and the CAN low. And in the past, they used to take out the plug from the headlight and then access it. Now they just sharpen those two needle points, push it through the plastic cover, and then perform the emergency start. Now, at the Insurance Crime Bureau, as I alluded earlier, our purpose is to address organized crime, impacting on the insurance industry, but also in South Africa at large. So when we had a serious escalation in the theft of luxury vehicles like the Lexus and the Prado and the Land Cruiser here in 2022. In our investigations with our member companies and law enforcement, tracking companies, security companies, we established that we could identify this specific Mazda CX-5 as involved in the majority of these relay attacks and CAN attacks in Gauteng. We then, and what we are actually very good at the Insurance Crime Bureau, is to take crime stats and turn it into intelligence and then work on it. And we are very good in predictive modeling. So we predicted where these guys will operate next. We had with our law enforcement partners and security companies and tracking, we flooded that area and then picked up this specific suspect vehicle. The vehicle was followed and two were hide out, and at that scene where the safe house was, the following items were recovered by law enforcement. First of all, this is a serious jammer that was recovered. This is really serious stuff, guys. This thing can jam. It will, it's just amazing that they have this technology. The next one is then the CX5 that in its own was also stolen through a CAN attack. But what we also found is this little device here. And this is actually the emergency start device camouflaged as a JBL speaker. So the device they use is not that one that I showed you. It's this JBL speaker. And on many occasions, policemen have arrested suspects with the speaker, and then the suspects would even tell them, I know you, you're going to steal my speaker, give it back to me, and then they would give him back the speaker. In fact, by giving him back the emergency start device. This is not your ordinary JBL speaker. It's no use. You order now suddenly JBL speakers and you think you're going to start vehicles. It's no use. This is just a camouflage. It's not the real Makoya. You need to buy the real Makoya on the dark web to get it. Then the other device that we recovered there was the actual relay attack device. And here you can see the two devices. And what is interesting in this device is that on this device, later emerged that when you purchase this device from a guy in the Ukraine, you need to pay him in Bitcoin. Once you paid him in Bitcoin, and he's got the serial number of this thing. When he asked, what's the serial number on the device? He said, and the guy's phoning, contacting him on the dark web. He said, but this device is supposed to be in South Africa, and you say you're from North America. And then he alluded and he said, okay, you bought this device now from somebody else and you got it from them. But first you need to pay me in Bitcoin and I will give you the code. What do you want to steal? You want to steal Toyota? Give me the proof you've paid the Bitcoin and I will give you the password for Toyota. If you want to steal and relay attack BMWs, or you want to relay attack VW or Citroen or the French suit, Citroen, Renault, those, pay the crypto and I will send you the password for that. So this device is already ready for a lot of vehicles, but your suit for Lexus and Toyota is the one that they had open on this device. And then obviously our favorite, the Lonsdorff 500, once again there. So yeah, these days also we find that they are cloning keys. It's also a vulnerability. But this in essence are the three of methods that I wanted to bring to your attention today. And this is, what are the solutions? The solution that I've got is we need to address the market. As long as there's a market for stolen vehicles, we can upgrade the technology as we want. If they cannot steal it, they will hijack it, but they will get it if that market demands it. Faraday key protection is a very good option for a relay attack. There's not much that you can do on a CAN attack. Toyota did a big recall and they've addressed the vulnerability at the headlights. We engaged very effectively with the manufacturers like Toyota South Africa on these matters, and they have really come to the table and they've made a big recall on their Hiluxes and their Fortuners, their Prados, and a lot of models were recalled for software updates. And then also you will see that the new vehicles are, your new Hilux is coming with a gear lock. engagement with authorities and the regulators. We are looking at customs and excise and seeing if we can block these devices from entering into South Africa. It's very difficult. Some of these devices we recently saw was even advertised at one of our big building supply companies. So the other one is aftermarket solutions. There's a lot of aftermarket solutions at the Insurance Crime Bureau, as with SAPS. We value any solutions that doesn't interfere with the safety of such a vehicle, and that will not impact on the warranty or the guarantee of such a vehicle, and that will not put you as a consumer in danger. We will always we will not endorse any products, but we will also be thankful for that. And maybe it's time to go back to the future. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. So I would like you to do any questions that you've got. You can pop it in the Q&A. Just start it off with ICB and then your question, and in the next session I will try to answer them as best as possible. And that's it. So thank you for the opportunity once again, and yeah, thanks. Goodbye.
Lawrence, baie dankie. Thank you for that. And as you know, I am, for my sins, I'm amongst things, or a motor underwriter. And I am reconsidering my options at this point in time, having just heard all that, that interesting feedback from you. But thank you for joining us. As usual, at this time of the day, we have the CEO of the Insurance Institute of South Africa, Thokozile Mahlangu, who gives us an IISA industry update. And we look forward to what you have to say to us today. Thank you, Thokozile.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. In today's update, I want to touch on about 4 or 5 points. The first one being that the super early bird registration for AIE 2025 is coming to an end at the end of September. So if you have not registered, please take advantage of this opportunity before we close registration. Another point is to remind members in good standing that we make available CPD accredited content at no cost to members, and that is through articles that we make available on a quarterly basis, available on the member portal, also emailed to members. And that content is content we get from our partner overseas, International Insurance Society. That is content that not only enables you to remain CPD compliant, but contributes towards your knowledge enhancement, towards making sure that you remain abreast of what's happening within the insurance industry, both locally and internationally. In the last month, we introduced member events. And this is a response to members giving us feedback that they want to connect and collaborate with each other. So we hosted our first event, Sip and Paint, and it was a huge success. And a big thank you to Momo from NTN for sponsoring that event and making it possible for us to bring it to life. And a big thank you to members that took advantage to come and spend the afternoon with us and spend time with other members as well. Keep a lookout for another event coming up, our very first golf, which will be taking place on the 17th of October, and that is open to members and non-members, and we are hoping that as a non-member, we will be able to convert you to become an accredited professional through experiencing some of the initiatives we do for members. So do take advantage and become an accredited professional. It is important that you are aligned to a professional body in the insurance industry. And in the insurance industry, you've got the Insurance Institute of South Africa as their professional member. We also want to say a big thank you to members that responded to the member survey. Part 2 of the survey has been sent out. We appreciate the feedback that adds value to us elevating our service offering and improving our value to you. So do respond to the second part of the survey and enable us to remain relevant to you. And I want to close off by saying, if you are like me and you joined the insurance industry unplanned, the IISA is intentional about elevating the awareness of careers in insurance. We've been partnering with various schools across the country where we go and deliver talks on the insurance career, and that is our way of making sure that we attract young bright minds into the industry by elevating the awareness, so that when they start choosing careers, they consider a career in insurance as well. And in doing that, we will have a pool of young people coming into the industry, young bright minds joining the industry, and that is exactly what we need, so that the profession continues beyond our time in the insurance industry. So with that, I want to say a big thank you once more to all members that are continuously engaging with us, connecting with us, giving us feedback. I want to say a big thank you to all members of the different committees, working committees that contribute towards elevating the Insurance Institute of South Africa, a professional body in insurance that is making a difference and creating accredited professionals. We look forward to welcoming those that are not members into the profession and making sure that you remain relevant, you are kept abreast of what is happening in the insurance industry. So if you are not a member, I want to repeat myself and sound like a parrot. It is important that you become aligned to a professional body, and in the insurance industry, you've got the IISA, which is that accredited professional body. For now, goodbye. I shall see you next month. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam CEO. We always appreciate you giving us an update on the industry. Speaking of Power Women and industry updates, next we have another regular that I always look forward to hearing from is Rianette Whitehead. Rianette is the co-owner and editor of FI News, and she's also the brain mother, I should say, behind the Insurance Apprentice. And I know that there's a lot of exciting things going on over at the Insurance Apprentice, and I'm sure Rianette's going to update us on all these developments, together with a general news update from the industry up next.
Good morning, everyone. As always, an absolute pleasure to join you for this edition of InsureTalk and share some insight on what's been happening in our industry. A reminder that FI News gives you daily newsletters to make sure you stay in tune and up to date with whatever is happening in the world of insurance and financial services. I've recently been doing a lot of interviews, and it's great to see how people really engage on the topics discussed. If there's anything you would really like to get a bit more clarity on, or you're just curious about something happening in the industry, let me know and I'll see if I can grab someone to chat to. A reminder that FA News is one of a kind and offer you many ways to get your news and insights, from 6 printed and digital magazines per year, covering every single part of the industry, daily newsletters, interviews, CPD, 3 hours per edition. With 6 editions, it gives you your 18, a website where you can find anything you need, and of course, the odd webinar. I've delved into the FA News website a little bit for today's session and looked at some of the most recent and maybe often talked about topics. I cannot highlight them all, but here's a few that caught my attention. Gareth Stokes, the FA News journalist, wrote a great newsletter called Risk Adequate, the New Buzzword in Global Reinsurance. It talks about the disciplines of risk management, mitigation, and transfer that are constantly evolving. Reinsurers are refining their underwriting practices to address the mega loss events arising from climate change and cyber liability. And one global reinsurer recently described its approach as risk adequate conditions, a term that essentially speaks to the delicate balance between price, coverage, and terms. As brokers, it's crucial that we understand the evolving language because it directly impacts how we present policy terms to our clients, right? Especially when exclusions for events like floods and fire are becoming more common. Another interesting topic that came up more than once is the South Africa's construction industry, which is navigating a challenging risk landscape exacerbated by shrinking margins, price competition, and material costs. It's concerning to see that the cost pressures are leading to undercutting insurance cover, unfortunately, which puts many businesses at risk. For those of you who are working with construction clients, it's important to remind them of the importance of adequate cover in these trying times. The value of insurance in protecting the assets and ensuring business cannot be overstated. At the recent FPI convention, there was an interesting discussion about retaining talent, particularly among younger financial planners and maybe then young professionals in general. The discussion is also relevant to the non-life space. There is a clear gap between what young professionals expect in terms of career growth and what they're actually experiencing. High attrition rates among young advisors highlights the need for better mentorship, soft skill training, and creating a nurturing environment for growth. We've just recorded a podcast yesterday with TIA called TIA Talks. And Jason, the host of TIA Talks, who is a broker himself, spoke to Lizelle van der Merwe, CEO of the FIA, and Darius Wyngaard, also a broker, about the exact same topic. And the challenge we face in this space, the fact that there are too little of the younger generation coming through, because it's okay to be there until a point, but the challenges are real in terms of how to take your career to the next level. So that episode will be released within the next few days, so make sure you don't miss that. It's TIA Talks. It is on the TIA YouTube page, and it's also on Spotify. So go and look for that. It's really fantastic to listen to. On the 18th of October, no, I'm lying. On the 16th of October, it's the FIA Summit. And for those who don't know yet, I'll be leading a panel on the topic of skills and knowledge, and how younger professionals educate themselves, get educated, or request to be mentored. What are the opportunities, and how do we as an industry adapt to a different way of doing things? Because I think times have most certainly changed. Even though this isn't directly related to short-term insurance, I like to quickly touch on the two-part system, which most of you probably have had some taste and flavor of in the last few weeks. I recently had a chat with Kushal Neertling from Liberty, and she shared some insights on what pension fund members are facing and also the process that they went through and the experience they had. So be sure to listen to my interview with Kushal. And Alex Forbes, one of the largest pension fund administrators in the country, mentioned that they are expecting withdrawals to the hit of 55 billion rand in the first year alone. It's essential that we remind clients to think carefully before dipping into their savings. A short-term solution could have really long-term consequences. So if you are considering that, think carefully about your decision. Finally, thrilled to announce that the Insurance Apprentice 2025 will be airing on SABC3 next year. Our slot is a Thursday, 7 p.m, with a repeat on a Friday at 2 p.m. We will then, straight after that, the following day or then early the next week, that will be still decided, still do our normal social media drive within our own industry, because we believe it's as important to get that drive going inside and compared to outside. Both have got their different roles and both are important. This is an incredible opportunity for us to really showcase what insurance is about. Our aim is really to also drive insurance as a career. I think it's one of the battles we've had, is to find skills and to get people to say, I want to work in insurance, right? I think most of us just fell into the industry. And we want to change that narrative. And I think we really have an opportunity with us going to television. So although applications have closed, we will do a short drive again, because we're looking for really amazing people. We have 150 applications, and we just want to make sure that we find the best of the best. So if being on television and taking part in a reality show was your first dream and thereafter insurance came, maybe you are someone we would like to have on the Insurance Apprentice. So please reach out to me. If you have not entered, you are under 35, and you do have more than 4 years experience in any part of the industry. And this is now wider because we cannot do the very, very technical tasks. We are addressing social, economic issues. We are talking about innovation. So if you're worried that you're not that very technical person, this is not a worry, because being it's on television, we cannot make it the most technical task out there. So hopefully if there was ever a doubt in your mind, this is your opportunity to say, you know what, I'm going to give it a chance. I'm going to step out of my comfort zone and just do this. Anyway, I think that's enough from me. Make sure you grab the upcoming edition of FA News for more insights, and don't miss out, like I mentioned on the TIA Talks episode. Thank you for your time. I have things. I've really talked fast. But if there's anything you would like FA News to touch on in terms of the magazine content, interviews, please reach out. The engagement is great. Keep your eye open on the TIA stuff, the podcasts we are doing, and any random wild ideas you want to share, approach me. We are that platform. Thank you for your time and enjoy the rest of your session today.
Thank you to our friend here at InsureTalk, Rianette, and all of the best with all the wonderful things that you do for this industry and the time and the effort that you invest into developing the future leaders of our industry. So we really do salute you and wish you strength on the next few months. Now, as usual, at this time of the day, we have an opportunity to take a breather, but also be entertained. Now, this month we are celebrating Heritage Month. So apart from the fact that it is the beginning of summer, it also marks Heritage Month, where we celebrate our nation's diverse culture and rich heritage. So this year, we also pause and reflect on our resistance and liberation heritage roots. We celebrate the roles played by brave men and women who were at the forefront of our resistance and liberation struggle. And that is one of the reasons why we have Zoliswa Tom. She an all-round vocalist, again from Cape Town. We've got some wonderful talent coming from the mother city. Her love for music began at primary school, where she was part of the school choir at the tender age of 11. She established a professional career in 2002 when she traded her vocal abilities with a Cape Town-based Afro-pop band, Mbombela, and later found interest in African traditional music when she joined the Bambanani Marimba Band as a lead singer and traditional dancer in 2005. She has gone on and acted in many South African musical acts all around the country. She has performed in productions on all continents, really, looking at Europe, North America, the Middle East, and Africa. She's a very versatile singer, and she praises the Almighty God for blessing her with a bold stage presence and the gift of a voice. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Xoliswa and I'm with Keketso Bolofo. We're going to be entertaining you today, and welcome to Short Talk. Our first song today is called Uthando Luphelile, and Keketso is going to be playing it on this beautiful instrument called Ingoni. Please enjoy. Ta-na-na-na-ne. Yo, 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 ma. Yeah, 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 my man. Banda kwethu alusekuthandwe emhlabeni, siyaphela thina. Alusekuthandwe emhlabeni, siyaphela thina. Yo, 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 mame. Uthando luphelile, luphelile, uthando luphelile, uthando lwabantu, uthando luphelile, oh ma, uthando luphelile, uthando lwabantu. Yeah. Banda kwethu alusekuthandwe emhlabeni, sibulalana sodwa, yema siqedana sodwa, yoma kudlwengulwa abantwana, kudlwengulwa abantwana. Yeah, yeah, Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed that. Now, our next song, we're going to be playing it on marimba. Asiwe saba mabuto Sizingwe Phezu komlambo welimpombo aema Asiwe saba mabuto Sizingwe Phezu komlambo welimpombo Sibuyembo Sibuyembo yaya Sibuyembo Yebo siga sibasa malongwe Sibuyembo Sibuyembo yobo Sibuyembo Yebo siga sibasa malongwe yeah yeah Malaika, nakupenda malaika, malaika, nakupenda malaika, na nini fanye nje, kishwana mwezi wo, nashidwa na malisi nawe. Nakupenda malaika Nashidwa na malisi nawe Nakupenda Mbesa zashungua roho yangu, mbesa zashungua roho yangu, indeguwa madiwe, indeguwa dada, nashidwa na malisi nawe, nakupenda malaika, nashidwa na malisi nawe, nakupenda malaika, nakupenda malaika, nakupenda malaika. Yes, I love you, my angel. Yes, I love you, my angel. Diakutanda malaika. Thank you very much. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed that. And that was Malaika. And the song before that was Amabuto and what was it again? Nonsiki, yes. And to remind you again, my name is Oliswa Tom, and I'm with Keketo Bolofo. You can catch us on Instagram, Facebook, Keketo Instagram, Facebook. Thank you very much. Enjoy your day. Bye.
I think I mentioned it last month, months are just flying past, that we are so blessed in this country at this point in time. We have so much to be proud of. There's so much happiness and really celebration of our culture and who we are as a people. And I don't believe that we could have celebrated it in a better way than with the earlier entertainment that we got to experience. So thank you for that. Now we're back to the lineup and the order of the day. Just before I introduce our next speakers, I just want to again thank Bright Insurance Company for supporting us as our headline event partner for the day. As you know, you can attend this event without having to pay for it because we have big corporates and businesses around the insurance industry in South Africa support us through sponsorship. So Bright, thank you very much, and thank you for making available such wonderful speakers, a speaker earlier on. Now, our next topic of the day is two speakers that's going to talk to us. Sarel Lamprecht. Sarel is the MD of Fischschild UMA Pty Limited, and McLeod Burrell, the CEO of CyberSafe Consultants. So I think it gives you a little bit of an idea of what we're going to talk about. So they're going to tell us a bit more about a holistic view of personal and SMME cyber insurance in the South African market and how it's impacted by emerging technologies. And then Mac is going to talk to us about cybercrime and the emerging trends. And I think I speak on so many of us. We all know that cyber is a major risk exposure that's becoming more prevalent. And yet at the same time, we don't always know enough about it. I know there are specialists out there, but in general. So this is going to be a very insightful and informative conversation. Just a quick recap. Sarel is the co-founder of Fischschild, started in 2012, and he launched its first of its kind loss of funds insurance product successfully in the South African market through retail in 2015. He's a specialist on cyber insurance products. And Mac, the CEO of CyberSafe, he's the founder of CyberSafe Consultants, and through various roles in the cybersecurity industry, McLeod has over 10 years of experience in the cybersecurity risks that individuals, SMEs, and enterprise corporations face, the emerging trends, and how to prevent and mitigate the damages that arise from cybercrime. So let's hear all about it.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you are all well. I am now going to share my presentation with you. If you wouldn't mind, you can see me now. I'm waving. I do prefer to chat without my camera. I find it a bit distracting. But if the organizers can confirm, I'm sure everyone can see my presentation. If they can't, just interrupt me and let me know. Alrighty, so we're a bit pressed for time, so I'm going to do my utmost to make sure that we can fit everything in. Firstly, starting off with cybercrime, ladies and gentlemen, the criminals are not who you think they are. They're not these Hollywood-esque people in basements in dodgy Hollywood movies. They are very sophisticated. They're run like legitimate businesses. They have accounting departments. They have actual office buildings. They have shift schedules. They develop and sell malware on the black markets. They run scam centers and they exploit vulnerabilities. The main goal is obviously to steal information and credentials for access or to hold info for ransom, the idea being that they're going to get some financial gain from it. These guys are worldwide and no person or company is exempt. It doesn't matter if you have a brokerage in Komatipoort. If they find a way or find your credentials, they will exploit you. Victims are targeted and non-targeted. Obviously, the large organizations tend to be targeted, but everyone's just kind of in this big bowl of soup on the internet, and there are bots trying to ping certain IPs, and when they find a company, then they will try and exploit them. Once again, they do not care who you are. It is not targeted. So what is the issue with combating cybercrime? Globally, everybody, not just in South Africa, there is a major lack of cybersecurity skill. If we look at South Africa, a lot of the major cybersecurity skill is all with the banks and with private cybersecurity organizations. There's a lack of context with regard to security incidents. There's a lack of agility in identifying and addressing breaches when they happen. And obviously coupled with the higher frequency and harsh nature of these threats, it creates a big issue. Furthermore, when companies actually obtain certain controls, as we call them, like an antivirus or a firewall, there is a lack of visibility on an ongoing basis with regard to the efficacy of these controls, i.e. how they're configured and the outputs they give to the people, obviously then creates an issue, rendering them useless. And then, of course, the prohibitive costs associated with the specialist security services and the solutions. Current landscape, guys, like I said, I'm pressed for time, so I'm just going to touch on a few of these. 60% of small businesses go out of business after being victims of a cyber attack. 95% of data breaches are due to human error. That is a big issue, guys. You're only as strong as your human firewall. 93% of data breaches are motivated by financial gain. Exactly. Well, why else would they be doing this? 46% of all cyber breaches are done on companies fewer than less than 1,000 employees, and we'll get to that a bit later. What else can we focus on here? By 2025, it is estimated that 60% of organizations will use cybersecurity risk as a key factor when determining transactions and business engagements with third parties. Another point, there are over 2,200 attacks each day, which breaks down to nearly one cyber attack every 39 seconds. And then finally, the last one I'll touch on, cybercrime is predicted to cost the world $9.5 trillion this year. Now let's look at the landscape in South Africa, guys. Here's a few companies that we know who've fell victim by various ways of cybercrime. Liberty Group, Life Healthcare Group, Momentum, Metropolitan, Stefanuti Stocks, PPS, TransUnion and Experian. Obviously, this is being recorded, so you can go back to that if necessary. Very, very recently, now in July, hackers stole 300 million from Public Works Department over 10 years. In a statement made by the new Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, Dean McPherson, said that the department was a soft target to cyber attackers as he and Deputy Minister Sihle Zikalala were conducting assessments of the department's work. The most recent attack occurred in May when 24 million was looted from the department. Now, guys, these are large organizations. The organizations I mentioned in my previous slide, some of them are listed on the JSE. I can guarantee you without a shadow of a doubt, they have spent hundreds of thousands, if not millions, on cybersecurity, skills, solutions, and personnel, and yet they are still breached. So what about the SME, which is a big issue? Enterprise, they have a CIO with an IT manager underneath them, internal third parties managing their cyber. They've got policies and protocols on how to conduct everyday business, as well as what to do in the event of emergency. They have cybercrime education. It's form with function and a large budget, and they're still prone to cyber attacks. In SME, no cybersecurity budget, no personnel, generalist IT people, free antivirus, no cybercrime awareness, function over form, even more prone to cyber attacks. So a hypothetical here. Let's say you're a broker and you have a good relationship with a family friend who's the FD or CEO of a large South African organization. And now you are their broker handling their sensitive information. You maybe have 8 or 10 employees. You host your mail to an outsourced provider that is minimal security. You've got a baseline antivirus. You have no real email security, as your IT guys are generalists. You know, they'll set up the email for you and, the Wi-Fi and so on. And perhaps during this client's renewal, your email is spoofed and the mail seems to come from you and tells this client that the banking details of the insurer have changed. Now you have to explain to your client why their annual policy is gone. Or perhaps you have a data breach and the info is now in the wild. Or you get hit with ransomware, there's going to be legislative consequences. And if we get to that, Poppy, guys, I'm sure everybody's sick and tired of hearing Poppy. Obviously, with Poppy, there's administrative penalties, civil liability, reputational damage, business disruption, and criminal offenses. Now, which is very refreshing from a cybersecurity point of view, companies are now being taken to task. The Tshwane University of Technology has suspended its vice chancellor. This was in December last year, regarding a breach that resulted in hundreds of thousands of records being stolen. Tshwane allegedly failed to address the attack or manage its aftermath, and the regulator issued an enforcement notice on the department as it had determined negligence was primary to blame for the attack. Another one, the regulator has fined the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development Affairs $5 million for failure to comply with POPIA Act after it flouted an order to renew its antivirus software. So the good thing here is the regulator is actually taking these organizations to task now and giving certain parameters as to why they have fallen, or rather been in breach of this legislation. So guys, what can we do? There's a few small things. Obviously, there's a myriad of solutions that we can all do, but I'm going to try and touch on some very basic, easy, low-hanging fruits that an SME can kind of engage in and do. First thing, guys, if you have a pen and paper, write this down right now. DMARC record, DMARC, an SPF record, and your DKIM record. Don't worry about it. Whoever is hosting your mail will know about it. And if they don't, that's a bit of a problem. Your DMARC is a protocol for authenticating an email sent from an organization's domain to establish if it's legitimate or not fraudulent. SPF record is a record that lists all servers authorized to send emails from a particular domain. And a DKIM is a protocol that allows an organization to take responsibility for transmitting a message by signing it in a way that a mailbox providers can verify. Don't worry about the jargon, ladies and gentlemen. Essentially, these records are like a bouncer outside of a club. Let's say it's a no under 21s club, and a group of 20-year-olds arrive, and they look like they're 24 or 25, but they're not. And they let themselves in. That's what happens with unauthenticated emails when you don't have these records in place. But if you have a bouncer asking and validating IDs, then you will prevent unwanted access. So these small things are going to prevent mail spoofing. Thirdly, guys, everybody has third-party hosting providers, whether it's your email or your website. A lot of these hosted providers provide you exactly what you ask for: an email, a mail server, a mail service, or a website. However, it's a non-security approach. It leaves multiple vulnerabilities on these servers, making companies utilizing these servers vulnerable to cyber extortion. So a lot of the times, there's hundreds of other companies on these shared servers, and the reason that there are vulnerabilities is to allow for functionality of certain websites. So if we take a builder's warehouse, for example, who have thousands of SKUs across their product line, and there's a shopping cart where you can purchase with your credit card and so on, but then you have mom and pop's pies, and they take orders and they've got a basic brochure website, but they also host their email with the same server. I can guarantee you that Builders Warehouse has their own cybersecurity systems in place that allows them to be on a server with those vulnerabilities, and it wouldn't be an issue for them, because if there was, they'd catch it. But mom and pop's pies will not catch that because they got little to no cybersecurity in place, but they've been placed on a server with multiple vulnerabilities. Again, this is not the hosting provider's fault. They're providing a service. Sometimes it's just as easy as trying to upgrade and tell them we don't want to have any vulnerabilities. And in order to do this, check your risk with a vulnerability scan, ladies and gentlemen. It's very easy and very necessary. Employee awareness, guys. This is a big thing. You are only as strong as your human firewall. There's Google. There are multiple avenues that you can go to test, to test employees and make them aware of these issues. It's a big must. Spear phishing, guys. Just take a look as to where check if the email's legit, if there's a sense of urgency. If there's spelling and grammar mistakes, make sure there's no funny links that they're trying to get you to click on and no dodgy attachments. The problem with this now in 2024 is cyber criminals are now using AI to generate phishing mails to cater directly to the audience they want to exploit. So if they wanted to generate an email, a phishing mail directed to a broker using insurance terminology, it will seem pretty damn legit. So you have to be very careful. Almost done, guys. Guys, this is an emerging trend that I've been speaking about till I've been blue in the face, guys. Everybody has a smartphone. And with that, you access your company emails and your banking details. Guys, it is a big issue. Apps that you access and download that seem benign are not really. If we look on the right, antivirus super cleaner, that is actually Sharkbot. It is a malicious app. It enables adversaries to autofill fields in legitimate mobile banking apps and infiltrate money transfers. It bypasses multi-factor authentication mechanisms, including behavioral detection like your biometrics. A very shocking stat, we're waiting for 2023, but 2022, there was 740 million Rand loss in the 1 year. That equals 2 million Rand a day attributed to mobile banking fraud. Guys, it's a big issue. Your mobile phone is a very powerful device nowadays, and the attackers are drilling people. I'm sure people have got funny SMSs. Your package is ready. Click on this link. There's a multitude of them. So you really have to be careful and take a look at trying to get some form of mobile threat defense solution. Cloud computing, guys. If you are accessing anything in the cloud for any reason, whether it's email, storage, whatever it may be, change your passwords once a month. Make sure they are complex and enable two-factor authentication. For those of you who don't know what two-factor authentication is, it's like Google. You get your login, your username, and your password. That's correct, but then it sends you a message to your phone to verify. Make sure that is enabled on all cloud platforms you use. Lastly, guys, as a takeaway, backups, guys. Do off-site incremental backups. Don't back up to a hard drive in your company's environment. Backup in the cloud and backup often, weekly. Technology is your friend. Get the email security. Get the paid-for antivirus. Update your Windows and your iOS and do regular risk assessments like vulnerability scans. Employee awareness. Make sure everyone is aware that cybercrime is prevalent and how they can fall victim to it. Again, YouTube is a wonderful place, guys. I really implore people to start making themselves aware and their employees. And then being in the cybersecurity industry, I'm a massive advocate for cyber insurance. So with that, I thank you very much. And I will now hand over to Sorrel.
There we go. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mac, and thank you for the kind introduction earlier. And especially thank you to everyone in attendance today who's giving me the opportunities to share some additional cyber insights to you. So I'm going to share my screen now, and then we will get cracking. There we go. Moving on to the agenda. I'll give a quick overview of the core tools and technologies that impacts commercial cyber risks into main pillars. As Mac has already covered that in detail now, I'll just mention them again. So thank you very much to you, Mac, for making my life a heck of a lot easier. I'll then move on to discussing a commercial data breach in terms of the cost, the time, the factors, and the factors that increase or decreases. And I'll spend a lot of time on that because that is probably a question that everyone is asking is, yes, there's a risk, but how are we affected by it and by how much and how long does it take? And then finally will be a summary of what all of this means. So let's begin. Cyber is an ever-growing risk and will continue to do so. Luckily, there has been decent strides made to combat this risk through various means of cybersecurity and insurance solutions. On the insurance solution side, a typical commercial policy should, in my opinion, at the very least, include some, if not all, of the following benefits or tools. An education portion, risk assessment and mitigation tools, services, and insurance benefits. This ties in with the core philosophy in cybersecurity of identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover, and is further explained through what the scope of a commercial cyber policy has. It has first and third-party losses, where the first-party losses are typically your business interruption, data restoration costs, extortion attack costs, and computer crime losses. Then moving on to the third-party losses, it's third-party claims, multimedia liability, regulatory expenses, and penalties. Then there are also emergency response costs, such as notification costs, incident responses, etc. And there are also typically proactive mitigation and monitoring tools to reduce the risk that form part of the underwriting process of incepting the policy. And then finally, there's also a reactive resolution center for post-breach monitoring until things have normalized. So next, we're going to have just slightly later, we're going to have a look at all these factors. How do they play into the overall cost of a breach? Next are just an overview again of the pillars to reduce cyber risk. Below, it's the awareness, cybersecurity awareness training. Like Max said, the human firewall is by far the most important element. That I'll also show later how this impacts a data breach. Comprehensive endpoint detection and response. It's also managed services these days, email security, and more specifically, like Max said, understanding the key indicators on how it works. Then cloud backup, whether or not it's appropriately set up and not just a walk-in and work situation. And then finally, also vulnerability management that should be prioritized, or risk-based vulnerability management based on your business, and have a vulnerability management plan instead of just being overloaded with the amount of vulnerabilities that you have been exposed to. So now we move on. This next part of the presentation is based on the findings of the 2022 and 2023 reports from IBM relating to a cost of a data breach, data breaches around the world. Now, before we dive into some of the highlights, we need to take a look and note some of the limitations of the research that's done. So I'll just briefly touch on them, some of the important ones, and then we're going to dive straight into the detail thereof. First and foremost it's a non-statistical result. So that means statistical inferences, margins of error, or confidence intervals is out the window. It's merely there to give a representative benchmark of an organization as a whole. And then the others, I mean, there could be non-response bias, sampling frame bias, and extrapolated cost results, which are less important for this discussion. Now, the sample size, it was companies, organizations that experienced the breach within those years that had data records stolen of between 2,100 and 113,000 compromised records. Now, that includes effectively all commercial businesses except micro SMEs, the very small ones, and the extremely large corporations, let's say anything above 25,000 employees, give or take. So it gives a good representative scale. Then another assumption that was made is that all the costs were scaled for South Africa based on global averages. It is also, it's assumed that the scaling of the breach cost is consistent with the overall ratio of South Africa's cost compared to the global average. And a last point to note is that the comparison of breach data between South Africa and global averages are kept in USD. But where the information is specifically relevant to South Africa, where no comparisons are made, it's converted to South African Rand. So just be mindful if I jump between USD and South African Rand. So now that all of that has been said, let's have a look at some of the data. The global average rose to $4.8 million in 2024 with a slight increase of roughly 10%. Now, South Africa remained roughly stable if you look at it in USD. However, the South African Rand varied by about 7% between 2022 and 2023 when the data was compiled. So it also follows the market trends in terms of an increase of a cost of a data breach. The cost of a data breach by industry in South Africa is shown here. where the most expensive is healthcare services at roughly 106 million per breach, followed by financial services, industrial, and then technology. There's been mostly an increase across the board from last year, except for healthcare, financial services, research, education, and public services, where there's been a slight decrease. This is just to give an indication of, per industry basis, what can you expect. This figure shows the total life cycle of a breach, where it's split into two main sections. The mean time it takes to identify a breach, or MTTI, and then the mean time it takes to contain a breach, or MTTC. The longer the life cycle of a breach, the more costly a breach is in general. You'll notice that the average breach life cycle has come down in 2024, which can be attributed to the adoption globally of risk or exposure reduction techniques or technologies, which we'll explore in a bit. The core principles is that a minimized MTTI and MTTC will lead to a lower breach cost. The method of identifying a breach also has a significant impact on the life cycle and cost of a breach, where there are three main different methods. First is through security teams and tools. This is either directly by an internal security team of the organization or via a managed security service provider, and has the shortest MTTI and MTTC. Secondly, it is disclosed via a benign third party. This is through third-party research or law enforcement. And yes, an organization can have a breach and only find out about it by someone else's publications in the media, well, in a research paper or in the media. Lastly, it's the disclosure from the attackers themselves. This is where the damage has already been done and thus has the longest MTTI MTTI and MTTC, because the attackers have investigated and done enough before revealing their presence to strike. This next figure is consistent with the life cycle of a breach on how it was identified, where the highest cost is through disclosure of an attacker, then through a benign third party, and finally identified through security teams and tools, where the South African average was just slightly over 53 million per breach in 2024. Now, the reporting period was from the 1st of March 2023 until the end of Feb 2024. That's why 2024's data is available. Next is the cost of a breach is broken down into four main pillars, and that is where the insurance benefits ties into. The first is notification at 8.8% of the total, and this includes emails, letters, outbound calls, or general notices to data subjects, as well as determination of regulatory requirements, communication with regulators, and engagement with outside experts. The next pillar is post-breach response at 27, almost 28%, which includes help desk and inbound communications, credit monitoring and identity protection services, legal expenditures, and regulatory fines. The next one is detection and escalation at 33.4%, which includes forensic and investigation activities, assessment and audit services, crisis management, and communication to executives and board, escalation of the matter. And finally, there's the loss of business at just over 30% of the total. And this includes business disruption and revenue losses due to ecosystem downtime, cost of losing customers and acquiring new customers, of losing customers as well as acquiring new ones, and reputational damage and diminished goodwill. Now, these segments give you a better understanding and indication as to what sub-limits value should typically be in an insurance policy, given the exposure of the business that you're trying to insure in terms of ratios of what should go where. Next, we also have a look at the per record cost of a data breach. And it's based on the main types of compromised records or personal identifiable information, or PII. The highest value is employee PII at just over 2,000 Rand, then customer PII, followed by intellectual property, other corporate data, and finally non-PII data. Now, again, the cost per records was derived assuming the ratio of South Africa versus the global overall cost is comparable. If not, the ranking of the types of data or records that were stolen are still the same. It's only in a US dollar value that reached a high a global average high of $169 per record on average in 2024. Another important thing to look at is what are the root cause of breaches? More than half of the breaches occurred via malicious insider or criminal attacks. However, the other 45% is due to IT failure or human error. This highlights the importance that there's no silver bullet, no matter the level of technological advances. The human firewall, as Max said, cannot be overlooked. And again, these are scenarios where an actual breach that led to a loss occurred. It's not the sheer number of attacks that businesses are facing. A global view on initial attack vectors, or IAVs, is displayed by how frequently they occurred, as well as the average breach cost. Global details were used to give a more representative sample size. Now, if you have a look at the figure, phishing and stolen or compromised credentials were the top two most prevalent IAVs with respect to frequency and cost. On the lower end of the spectrum, system errors, physical security compromise, accidental data loss or stolen device, and known unpatched vulnerability ranked among the least frequent. When it came to cost, system error and cloud misconfigurations were the least on average. And these are just the source of the breach. In this figure, the top 5 IAVs are ranked with respect to the response time or the overall breach lifecycle. Unknown zero-day vulnerabilities are the fastest at 252 days overall, with both phishing and stolen or compromised credentials ranking under the top 5, although they also have, on average, the highest overall breach cost. The following two figures on this slide and the next slide indicates the impact of certain events or technologies on the average breach cost scaled for South Africa. It should be noted that each factor was measured in isolation against the average cost and do not constitute a cumulative effect. The top 2 mitigating factors are employee training, which is a massive pillar, and AI and machine learning driven insights. Some of the other notables are insurance protection and a combination of most of the core pillars that Mac and I just briefly touched on again to reducing the cyber risk. The reason why cyber insurance protection likely reduces the risk is the specific underwriting requirements and that policies have when they incept a policy. So those factors themselves are a function of these factors that were measured on their own. The range on the average breach cost in South Africa is anywhere between 1.8% to 5.3% in isolation per factor. Just as there are mitigating factors, there are also amplifying factors. The factors that increase the cost on our shown here. The top 3 factors were the following. Security system complexity. Yes, the more complex your system, the longer it takes to identify and contain a breach. Security skill shortage and third-party breaches. Third-party breaches means service providers that it's a downstream function and not something you have necessarily control over in your own network. The range on the increase on the average breach cost in South Africa is anywhere between 3.8% and 5.2% in isolation per factor. Again, where the average was 53 million per breach. The impact of having a high level versus a low level of the top 3 mitigating factors is now shown. Having a high level reduces the breach cost, the average breach cost. However, if a low level of the mitigating factor is present, the effect is actually higher than the average for South Africa of 53 million. However, this is still better than having no level present at all. The impact of having, just as there are mitigating factors, we're having a look at the amplifying factors, where it's a high and low level of the top 3 the top 3 amplifying factors. Again, having a high level increases the average breach cost significantly, and a low level of the amplifying factor, and if a low level of the amplifying factor is present, the impact reduces the cost below the average of the 53 million. So these previous 2 figures just gives insight into the spread of the impact that a mitigating factor or amplifying factor can have as a whole on a breach in a company. There's no specific method. It needs to be implemented, and then to a high level also, such as awareness of your employees, as an example. Next, we move on to extortion attacks. What are the costs? The amount that organizations can spend on extortion attacks depends on the type of extortion attack, as well as how they respond to it. This relates more to the involvement of law enforcement, I would guess, first world countries with specialized units, or professional services through incident response programs elsewhere for the rest of the world, or let's say the third world. In this figure, the cost of the three types of extortion attacks is shown. First is ransomware, where data is encrypted and a ransom is demanded, and it's at the lowest average breach cost of 53.4 million in South Africa. Second is data exfiltration, where data is stolen and the organization is sometimes extorted, and is in the middle with an average breach cost or amount of 56.7 million. Lastly is destructive attacks, and this is where attackers delete data and destroy systems for their own objectives, which has the highest average breach cost amounting to 61.8 million in South Africa. So ransomware depends how. Did they extort? Did they just sell the data? Did they just go in to destroy for whatever the reasons might be, which leads to an additional breach cost? Looking at the MTTI and MTTC of these attacks, the average ranged between 284 to 294 days, where there's likely the time to contain is 73 days, which is typically where all the damage happens in terms of potentially being system shut down, trying just to contain the breach itself. And then we move on to a sensitive topic, extortion attacks, to pay or not to pay. In the 2023 report, the impact of paying the ransom demand or not was specifically investigated. The payment of the ransom itself was not included in the total breach cost shown here, where this figure shows the impact thereof. There's a slight reduction in the overall breach cost, but given that the global ransom payments, and when I talk about payments, it's the physical amount that was paid, not the demand that was made. In 2023 was $400,000 from a report from Sophos. It is likely that organizations who opted to pay the ransom ended up paying more than the total breach cost. If you have a look, it's roughly a 15% reduction. Add $400,000 on there. I mean, the math speaks for itself. A ransom payment is also no guarantee of no further cost being incurred, and is usually only part of the overall cost. That's why it's critical that professional incident response services and processes are followed or consulted during these types of attacks. Paying or not paying comes down to the degree of the breach, the expected fallout, and the response or containment tools available to the organization. And it often has an ethical element also attached to it in South Africa, from what we've seen. As a side note, the ransom payment amounts between 2023 and 2024, also from the Sophos State of Ransomware report, rose from $400,000 to $2 million USD globally, where 93% of the demands were in excess of $1 million or more. If this is factored into the total breach cost on the global average, then the amount could be significantly higher than on the experiment that was done, or the reporting that was done, than the people who opted not to pay. Just something about post-breach. Once a breach has been contained, it takes a considerable amount of time to recover fully, where the organizations, it took 78% of all organizations who fully recovered from the breach took longer than 100 days, and 35% of them took longer than 150 days to fully recover after the breach has been contained. That's to get to normal, let's call it steady state, operating steady state. Moving on to the summary, it's always a case of not if, but when, for a data breach to occur in your organization. Various tools or technologies can be implemented to reduce the cost of a breach On a high level, it can be condensed into 5 core pillars, as was previously discussed, or branched out considerably to show the impact of each individual factor through their effect on MTTI and MTTC, which ultimately leads to a cost reduction of the overall breach. Insurance policies rely on or incorporate some of these tools and technologies to reduce risk to an acceptable level. However, the cost of technologies versus insurance is probably somewhere between, depending on the size of the organization, a 10 to 1, maybe 20 to 1 ratio, making it costly. Insurance forms an integral part of the recovery process of a breach. And if we think back to the philosophy of identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover, it fits firmly into the recovery phase while trying to add some value in terms of the other sectors of a cybersecurity framework. And should be considered complementary instead of competition to each other. Insurance and technology should work together, not try and take a slice of the pie, which is actually not their slice of the pie. There's a much bigger view that should be taken, and collaborations. An ideal scenario would be to have tools or technologies in place naturally at an affordable rate while being non-disruptive to business operations that would collectively strive to minimize the breach lifecycle. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation. And yes, we are pressed for time, so Mac and I will answer questions in the FAQ chat. And if not, then I'm also happy to take questions or any queries on my email, which is sorrel@farshield.com. Thank you.
The Relationship Manager for the East Coast region for Old Mutual Insure, Sebastian. Thank you, Sarah and McLeod, and I really appreciate you demystifying the risks of cybercrime and cyber insurance. Now next, we have something new and something interesting. As you know, many of you support the local insurance institute. So each region has got his own local insurance institute. We just had David Chow, past president of the Insurance Institute of the Western Cape. We all know the IIG. It's the biggest insurance institute in South Africa. But what we are going to be doing is with every conference going forward, we're going to have someone from a local institute come and present to us on what's going on in their region. And I think it's super exciting and fantastic, and just to pull everything together nicely. So on this inaugurational insert, we have Sebastian Reddy. Sebastian is currently the Deputy President of the IIKZN, and he is also the Relationship Manager for the East Coast region for Old Mutual Insure. Sebastian is a friend of the team here at CN&CO. So we really appreciate you being the first one, Sebastian. He's got more than 15 years of experience in the industry, and he does commercial, personal, and agri. He is a husband, and he's a father of 2 really beautiful children. He loves to cook, he loves to sing, and lately he enjoys listening to his wife sing. I've heard a little birdie tweet that his wife is quite the prolific singer. Currently, Sebastian is completing his associateship via Millpark Education. He's the Deputy President of the IIKZN, and he's been on council for 7 years. And I just want to say something about this. I am passionate about it. I spent 11 years on the Cape Town Council. Council members give their time free of charge. They do that job, and I remember when I took over from Kieran Fels, I think, as president. Yeah, and I think he's the one who said to me, being president of the local institute is a thankless job. And it really does feel like that, because it takes a lot of time to serve the industry through spending time on council. So we're going to hear a bit about what the IIKZN is busy with. General update. Over to you, Sebastian.
Hi, and thank you to everyone. Hi guys, Sebastian here from KwaZulu-Natal. Surprisingly, a very warm day here in the KwaZulu-Natal area. Thank you, InsureTalk, for giving us this opportunity just to talk about the insurance industry and what we are doing as the IIKZN. Thank you on behalf of our president, Shivani Keshav. I obviously am in the role of deputy president for the IIKZN, and as Christelle mentioned, being part of council is actually a thankless job. What we do on council is the fruition of the industry and try to keep it fresh and relative. We try to push on beyond boundaries of limitations of what we have today, from having big areas to conduct big webinars and seminars, but also embracing technology today and having webinars available to us. To that, the IIKZN are pioneering relative insurance related subject matters that are actually very, very important to us, that we feel from concept to implementation to delivery to all those that are around us in the insurance industry. So the topics that come out of the IIKZN is fantastic. I think it's fresh, it's new, it's not repetitive. We don't want death by PowerPoint. We want real issues that are affecting us, and that is what we as the IIKZN want to achieve for the years ahead. What we've also started in the IIKZN is collaboration with our sister councils or family councils around the country, the IIB, the IIEC, the DII, the IIWC, the IIG. So we have partnered with all of these council members to actually bring education through, because that's the backbone of our insurance industry, which is education. We want to be able to do more and give more to the people out there. Shout out to the IIKZN team for actually putting out some fantastic webinars for 2024, the sports, the social team, all that we are doing. Another thing that we have started this year was we have started to create what we call the Vault. So if you ask anyone in the IIKZN space, what is the Vault? The Vault is all our accredited webinars and topics and subjects that we are hosting within the IIKZN for this year. We have put it into a vault which we use on the platform of AC Develop, and anyone can access that topics and subjects that we did and at least listen to it and still get accredited for that. That's something that we are working on to try and get that accreditation through to as many people as we can to get that CPD through. Thank you to every single one of you guys for partnering. It is very important for everyone to remember supporting your local council is important. Yes, there is a brand that is brought through from the sponsorship perspective, and thank you to you for actually putting your hand up to sponsor this. It will not be possible without the contributions that you guys have to the insurance industry and to the councils. We are only able to keep going because of your continuous support. So from us, thank you very much for listening to me. Have a fantastic day.
Sebastian, thank you so much. That was a fantastic update from you. And I just want to congratulate you on your collaboration with the other regions in South Africa. I know that your webinars are of the best performing, if not the best performing webinars in the South African insurance industry. I know from personal experience, because we had the Coleman webinar, the first one last year. It was so well attended, and the next one's coming up in October. So really congratulations to the IIKZN for the work that you do, not just for the local region, but really from a national perspective as well. So that's truly, truly wonderful. We're on to the last speaker of the day. This is someone quite well known to many of you, Gareth Stokes. He is the head of content and communication strategy at Stokes Media. He's a specialist financial writer, and he's the author of Everything You Need to Know About Non-Life Insurance in South Africa. Now, this is a fantastic book, and if you don't have a copy of it yet, please make sure that you get it. It is an unbelievable source of information about non-life insurance in South Africa. And he's going to talk to us today about the insights that he gained from reaching and writing this definitive guide to South Africa's non-life insurance market. Now, who is Gareth Stokes? He's an author, journalist, and of course a writer with over 2 decades of experience covering South Africa's financial services sector. He writes about financial my tongue just doubled up there. He writes about financial intermediation, forgive me, it's not my first language, insurance and investments, among other topics, and he contributes to well-known publications such as FA News and the Africa-focused insurance sustainability newsletter, Africa Ahead. So with that tongue twister behind me, I hand over to Gareth.
Thanks, Christelle. Hello, all you wonderful InsureTalk followers. It's so refreshing to be joining the 46th broadcast of this excellent short-term insurance-focused initiative from the other side of the camera. I've attended so many of these virtually, but this will be the first time that I do my time in front of the camera, as it were. So allow me a moment to quickly do all that sharing stuff. Right, here we go. Hopefully everyone's seeing that up on the screen there. I'm just trying to move a window that's suddenly blocked me here, so just bear with me another second.
Sorry, Gareth.
Right. Sorry
to interrupt you. We can't seem to be seeing your screen. Can you just maybe stop share and just share again? Apologies for that.
Okay. Is that working?
We can see your main screen. We can't see your presentation as yet.
Okay. Is that there now?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Gareth.
Thank you, and apologies for that. Yeah, we were all hoping that this goes seamlessly, but hiccups abound. So as I was kicking off, to keep with the title of my book, which you see on the right-hand side of the screen there, I've also gone maximum possible characters on my presentation title. So brace yourself, dear listeners, for insights from researching and writing, the definitive guide to South Africa's non-life insurance market. If it exists in the realms of insurance and insurance distribution, I've tried my best to get it into the book, but obviously I've had to do a bit more of a selection process to see what I can squeeze into the next 25 minutes or so. This presentation is obviously going to be a bit different to what you normally encounter, so do bear with me. So, since the July 2024 publication of the 4th edition, I've been keeping my ear to the ground, and this is what I've been hearing about the 4th edition of the book. Some say it's quite possibly the best guide to South Africa's short-term insurance ever. And many, many others have told me that they pick the book up and they can't put it down. They read it from beginning to end. But then, of course, there are also those naysayers, those creepy negative people who rudely decry, toss your sleeping pills aside and read 2 pages of this book instead. I guess you'll have to grab a copy to figure out which side of this camp you sit in. Jokes aside, ladies and gents, I have had so much fantastic feedback over the 4 editions, including the following, which have pride of place on the back cover. Rianette, who we all know as the co-owner of FA News, and for her excellent work with the Insurance Apprentice series, says, a great read for anyone involved in non-life insurance. This book offers a thorough understanding of market dynamics, key industry players, and applicable regulatory frameworks. Pierre Geyer, who many of you will have interacted with in his various roles at Hollard, was really upbeat too. He says, Gareth has a knack for explaining technical concepts in a clear and engaging way, and for providing practical examples and case studies. And finally, Professor Emeritus Robert Vivian, who recently retired from his economics and insurance post at Wits, writes, the author is exceptionally knowledgeable in the matters on which he reports, as becomes clear from the contents of this publication. This text is suited for everyone working in the non-life insurance industry. And I share these quotes because I think they really do well to encapsulate what I try to do with the project. It's to create a really comprehensive overview of the South African non-life insurance industry, encompassing market statistics, regulation, and some operational matters of insurance. A special word of thanks to the Prof for writing a foreword to the second and third editions of my book, and to Tony Tsung of Old Mutual Insure for his kind words in the foreword in the latest edition. I must say both Tony and the Prof have been willing to interact with me when I reach, when I need clarity on difficult issues in technical insurance matters. So moving on to the meat of the presentation, what I decided to do is split it into three parts. I want to begin with a brief history and maybe share some context of how the idea for the project arose and how it progressed from its initial start. And then a quick look at what's inside the book. I want to share some of the insights on the local insurance market, perhaps some financial sector regulatory comments as well. And finally, have a brief look at some of the challenges that I faced in researching and writing the book, and that I think many of us face in our businesses, albeit maybe in a different construct. So I call this a brief history, and it looks like a busy slide, but when you actually zoom away from it, there are only 6 engagement points there. I can trace the history back all the way to 2015. I was sitting at one of those coffee lounges during a coffee break at one of the many insurance and investment events that I attend, and I was approached by fellow journalist Liz Still. Liz, as many of you may know, has worked on a comprehensive overview of the South African healthcare sector for many, many years. And her and I got talking about the lack of a single source of information and market statistics covering the short-term insurance sector. Somehow, and sometimes I regret this, we decided it would be an excellent idea to clone that healthcare book concept into the non-life insurance sector. That was back when I still had loads of spare time. So after many, many late nights and working over weekends and holidays, Liz and I launched the first edition under the simple title Short-Term Insurance in South Africa at the 2016 Insurance Conference at Sun City. From an industry support perspective, that first edition still remains the best supported, with a list of the who's who in insurance broking and support services committing to the project. And I should take this moment to really thank all of the brands that have been involved over the years. I have a number of brands that have supported in each of the 4 editions, and I think they deserve a round of applause for that. And certainly they do have my thanks. So Liz and I teamed up again, if you look at the second title there under the number 2018, tackling the writing between January and June of that year, and again launching the publication at Sun City. In fact, I've successfully launched all of the books there, and I have to thank the organizers of the African Insurance Exchange for their help in allowing me to at least launch and present the book to the industry from that showcase. It makes my life so much easier. Now, early in 2019, I've got the heading there, acquisition. You have to turn your head slightly to see it, but just read from the bottom to the top. After much discussion and introspection, I decided that the venture could not carry 2 writers. The commercials just didn't work. So I bought out Liz's share, and I've continued with the publication ever since as a division of Stokes Media. So I do content, communications, and a bit of publishing. COVID was a bump in the road, as you all know. I didn't put out a book in 2020. The timing was really off. And I think of each of us experienced that period as really a bit of a business unusual. But I can I can look back now, and the next 4 years, have gone seamlessly, and I put out the book in 2022 and 2024. It's really a great sense of pride when I sit back a bit and I look over those 4 titles, and I appreciate the number of hours and effort that has gone in from myself and from the various people that have assisted me and the support of the sponsors to put together that universe. And that's really a massive body of short-term insurance-focused knowledge. So moving on to what's inside the book, and I've only got 5 slides here. I don't want to go into too much detail. And as I say here, the book is a monster. It's not something you're going to read in one sitting, besides those guys claiming earlier. It runs over 13 chapters and is just short of 340 pages. So the best advice, I think, is just keep a copy on hand and dive in and out of the sections as and when. So the first 3 chapters are really about introducing the basic principles and foundational considerations of short-term insurance. The facts that underpin underwriting. concepts such as the law of large numbers, insurable interests, and the principle of indemnity. I also briefly unpack a range of industry terms such as aggregation, exclusions, onus of proof, and underinsurance, to name a few. And the idea with all of those is really just to give people a sense, a layperson really, a sense of how these concepts work and what they mean in the insurance context. So the idea is that anyone, whether you're a starter, whether you're joining the industry from another industry, whatever level you are, you will really find something of use in the copy. If you move to the center of this slide, I talk about the value of insurance, and I cover that concept, I think, largely in chapter 4 of the book, which is titled Insurance and the Economy. This part of the text deals with how insurers and insurance brokers empower businesses and households through risk transfer. So I think we all know our industry greases the wheels of economy, and that's why it's such an important industry to be part of. I go into quite a bit of detail in that chapter on how insurers and reinsurers move through hard and soft cycles. But to share something useful and simple, we can chat about a formula for forecasting an insurer's gross written premium for the coming year. I first heard about this formula back in 2013 or 2014 when Ian Kirk was CEO of Santam. There, bottom right of the screen, you see that GWP, which stands for gross written premium, can be approximated by taking the forecast inflation for the coming year, adding to it the forecast economic growth as measured by GDP, and then adding something that the insurance industry calls a market expectation variable. If you sum all of those, you should get to a number that more or less approximates what you can expect your insurance business to do in the coming year. That market expectation variable is really based on the executive team's expectations for how good the business environment is. So if they think it's going great, they might say plus 2% there, or plus 3%. If they think it's going treacherously, they might move closer to zero and even into the negatives. But there are few cynics amongst the executive, I think, so that number is normally positive. There is another chapter in the book dedicated entirely to systemic risk, which looks at the potential impact of a range of risks on local and global insurers and reinsurers. I have images of a couple on the left-hand side of your screen, including climate change. We all know that the challenges presented by extreme weather, pandemic in the center there, and political violence. On the right-hand side, I've shared some insights into global natural catastrophe losses, courtesy Munich Re, also contained in the book, obviously. So there you can see NatCat losses for 2023. This is from natural catastrophe loss events, a total of $90 billion of insured losses and 74,000 fatalities. You know, this was the year, unfortunately, where we saw that massive earthquake in Turkey, Syria, which caused $50 billion in economic losses, incidentally, of which only $5.5 billion was estimated to be uncovered. And there my sharp eye sees the R5 instead of the $5. I guess these things happen. That last bullet point there just illustrates the level of insurance gap that is still out there in the world. I mean, it's not possible probably to ever close that gap fully, but there are certainly segments of the market that do a better job of covering their people against risk through insurance. So there are many more systemic risks that are giving underwriters sleepless nights, including cybersecurity. We've had 2 great presentations on that earlier in today's session, and grid failure and space weather, if you'd believe. The book includes a wonderful graphic representation of these risks, which I borrowed from Lloyd's. It's just a nice pictorial layout of all the risks and how they slide along the impact scale. For those who want to see insurance in action, I've included a few case studies in the book. One example being how Sasria Soc Limited and its main shareholder, the South African government, responded to that 2021 riots and looting event in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng. I think when the dust was settled, Sasria paid out over 32 billion rand in claims. And that's all money, ladies and gents, that goes back into the economy and allows individuals and businesses to get back on their feet after a tragic event. Right, one of the interesting angles that I cover in this chapter, and something that the more studious among you might want to look into, is how governments and regulators are dealing with the too big to fail concept, especially from an insurer perspective. My text includes some positioning in this regard from National Treasury and the Prudential Authority. Technology. I really struggled with the technology chapter because so much is happening and so fast. And I'm sure you can agree with me, it's not the greatest idea to go and put thousands of words of black and white print in a hard copy book in a field that is moving this quickly. Nevertheless, to try and make things easier, I stuck with the 4 tech megatrends that I described in my 3rd edition, as shared by Accenture in one of their excellent reports. These include, and I've put them up in the center there, WebMe, programmable world, the unreal, and computing the impossible. So just to give a bit of an additional context there, the WebMe trend deals with the reality and the potential of being able to, sorry, I'm missing the point there, involves the closer interaction of humans and the internet, such as engaging in commerce in a virtual world or metaverse. The last point there, computing the impossible, deals with the new age of calculations that we'll be able to do using quantum computing and further advances in supercomputers, for example. Now, a small confession, I think I botched the explainers on those terribly, but if you get a copy of the book, you can probably sort out the mess that I just made there. Right, I also took some time to think about the impact of a handful of emerging technologies on insurers and insurance brokers. These include things like automation, artificial intelligence, and the cloud, among others. One interesting observation while researching this book was that although telematics has been around for over a decade, there are many people who are still not using that technology to its full impact. And I think the lesson that we can take from that is that you don't have to be the first adopter of a new tech. There is so much you can do with the technologies that we already have. And the onus is on you to make sure that your systems and processes always use the technology to its best potential. So I didn't want to go too much into regulation. I mean, it's a boring, dull subject. Obviously, we all have to be compliant and we all have to pay attention to new regulations and do our part to make sure that we give our inputs when required. The book covers regulation in 3 chapters. I have chapter 11 for an outlay of the regulatory environment, including how law is made in South Africa. I found that quite informative the first time I wrote about it, and less informative each subsequent time because very little has changed since the first edition. I then have a chapter on guiding principles and proposed laws, which is chapter 12 you see there. And finally, a chapter on the in-force regulation. So chapter 12 and 13 are very much focused on the short-term insurance sector. I've got the last bullet point on the right there, Kofi, a slow grind, which is my excellent attempt at humor. One of the drawbacks of webinars is you never have that interaction with your audience, but I'm sure you're all absolutely laughing out loud, or whatever the correct term is. Ironically, in 2018, when Kofi was still first proposed, I included a comment somewhere in the text saying Kofi soon to be enacted. And I could literally copy and paste that paragraph into each of the subsequent editions. Because as I went to print at the end of June 2024, all I could say about Kofi was Kofi being enacted soon. So I'm with you, ladies and gentlemen. We don't know when it's coming, but it's coming soon. Right, then this is the part of the book that everybody raves about, because this is where I really do the most work in terms of researching what's going on in the industry. There are a couple of chapters dealing with the insurance market. Chapter 6 or chapter 8, I can't now remember, deals with, sort of gives an overview of the product landscape with reference to the Insurance Act. So I find it quite interesting that despite the expansion of short-term insurance classes from 8 to 17 classes, most of the large insurers are still reporting their business under their old classes. There were 8 old policy types, I think they were called. Be that as it may, I guide readers through all 17 classes and the subclasses, which in the most cases are either personal lines or commercial. So you'll have motor as a class, and then you have personal lines or commercial as the subclass. When you get to liability, there are a whole bunch of subclasses, but I won't go into that. It's far too complex to get into a slide here. Chapter 7 is where the rubber hits the road. That's where I unpack and drill down into the market. I explain how factors such as insurance cycle, inflation, GDP growth, and widening cat losses impact the sector. I also share some background on the mega loss events that have occurred in South Africa over the last 5 years. I think you're all familiar with them. We had COVID and business interruption claims. Then the industry was called on to respond to the 2021 KZN riots. And then in 2022, we had that massive flood event in Durban and surrounds. So the insurance industry has stepped up in all of those cases, though I'm guessing it was touch and go a bit with the Sasria matter. On the right-hand side, I've sort of shared the big picture of the short-term insurance market as shared in the book as well. These are license and gross written premium stats supplied by the Prudential Authority and or the Reserve Bank. They seem to both publish some stats on the matter. And I believe the licensing is up to date there to end 2023, and the premium is the financial year 2022, or the full year 2022. So we had 58 primary insurers writing 146.8 billion rand, 6 cell captives writing 30 billion, 6 captive insurers doing 1.5 billion, and 9 reinsurers doing 3.6 billion. Now there's an asterisk next to that, and I'll get to that a little bit later. The market, I've also included my take on the top 5 by license in the center of the screen there. So if you look at the insurance license, this is just taking all of the licenses issued by the PA and looking at their gross written premium for a given period. And the ranking there is Santam, Guardrisk, Hollard, Old Mutual Insure, and Outsurance. And then when you sort of try and take all of the licenses and sum them up under the main diversified financial services brand or group, the picture remains kind of similar, because you've got Santam there at the top still, then MMI Holdings, then Old Mutual, then Hollard, and finally Outsurance. These figures are also up to date for the 2022 year, and they do not include the effect of some recent transactions. Excuse me. If you keep your ear to the ground, you'll know that Old Mutual purchased Generic, and we are still waiting, in these numbers anyway, for the bedding down of the Renasa transaction into the Teleshow Holdings Group. Overall, if I look at these top 5s, even the top 10s, there hasn't been a hell of a lot of movement. There are a couple of clear trends that have come out of it. For example, the direct insurers such as Outsurance and King Price have made massive inroads in terms of growing business. And then there's been a quite significant shift towards the cell captive structure, as evidenced by Guardrisk's climbing up the ranks of late. Almost done with the what's inside, and then not too much more to go. I basically have to disclaim this section by saying that painting an accurate picture of the broker market is close to impossible. I've done what I can, referencing insurer annual reports and talking to brokers through the biennial Stokes Media Broker Perception Survey. So we go out every 2 years, and I talk to a whole bunch of brokers, collate all their views, digest all their inputs, and then I try and create a picture of what the overall broker environment looks like from that information. So as disclaimed, this is perception-based, and it requires a lot of guesswork to patch it together. The big picture numbers that I have on the right-hand side there, the total market is about 178.2 billion in premium. That's if you take all of the insurers together. This is excluding the reinsurers. The broker share of that, I estimated around 142.5 billion, and the direct share is about 35.6 billion. Overall, on that table in the left is my guesstimate of what the broker landscape looks like. I think that there are about, well, there's certainly more than 2,500 brokers who I separate into 9 or 10 mega brokers writing more than 1.5 billion rand in a year. Then 35 large brokers that place between 250 million and 1.5 billion each year. Around 100 mid-sized brokers writing between 50 million and 250 million. And then all the rest writing probably less than 50 million annually. There are some interesting facts that came out of annual financial statements, which I've incorporated in the book this time around. Santam, for example, says they deal with 3,015 mostly independent brokers. Old Mutual Insure lists 2,958 independent brokers. Well, when I say they list them, I mean they mention that they do business with them. They don't actually provide us with a list. And then Hollow deals with more than 1,500. The insurers that I approached for more detailed numbers on the broker markets did, however, warn me not to try any clever statistical tricks to estimate the size of business here. They said it cannot be as simple as taking gross written premium, dividing it by the number of brokers, and then trying to apply some clever statistical curve to the result. So I didn't. Moving on to challenges, and if you'll bear with me, I'm pretty close to the end here. Top challenge, data, data, data. And it's kind of an exclamation and a plea. Insurers are hungry for it, but so are journalists and writers. I mean, over the last few years, it has become increasingly difficult to access the information needed to inform the size of market research that is included in my book. And even where things should be simple, you know, for example, comparing a big insurer's annual financial statements over a period of 3 years, I'm often left trying to figure out what happened to this line of business, or reverse or forward engineering the line of business based on last year's number and a percentage growth given in the current year. So it becomes extremely challenging. I can't wait until IFRS, I mean, with IFRS coming in now, it's going to be absolute mayhem. We'll hardly have any look through into previous periods. And I guess we'll have to start sort of tracking the statistics from the beginning again. So my third bullet point on the bottom left there is something that I think all stakeholders in the industry should be making more noise about. Where is our regulator in all this? All FSPs and product providers are required to submit extensive information to the regulator each year. So why do we not see a dashboard summary of some of these stats, you know? Why can't we have a central point where we access registered entities, see a breakdown of who is active and who is not, who is blacklisted and who we can or cannot do business with? To continue the rant, the reports by the old FSB were far more granular and far more frequent than what we get out of the PA and SARB at the moment. That comment I made about reinsurance earlier, it was really incredibly difficult for me to figure out what the PA meant by reinsurance, because that's certainly not the number of what reinsurers do in the business. Anyway, I think I figured it out, but you'll have to read the book to find out what that's all about. I then also thought to share a brief comment on funding and support. The book is a hard sell sometimes, and it can be tough to handle the marketing and the writing function man alone, as it were. So my appeal to insurance and insurance broking brands is just to recognize this project as an education and CSR-focused initiative, rather than something that's specifically about brand exposure and ROI on advertising spend, as it were. The advertising brand should not be the driving rationale for supporting a project of this type. And then a last little gripe, and I direct it at all of you guys who no doubt have thousands of emails in your inbox at any time, is this crazy slow turnaround of any engagements we have by email nowadays. I mean, of course, I'm not asking for an immediate no, sponsorship denied when I send my email, but it's nice to know that you've received it, and it's nice to know that, hey, I'm here, I've got your mail, you're at the right place in the company. But I'll leave that there. I think I'll skip out that industry engagement because I see I'm running close to the end of time here. The comment that I did want to make, bottom right bullet point, is that succession is not just a CEO and executive level thing. Your firm has many touch points with clients, internal and external, stakeholders, internal and external. And you need to ensure that there's succession in those departments too. It's fascinating how often I reach out to a marketing department and have a person, the changes are so great that nobody in the marketing department has even heard about the project, for example. I just think it's something to think about and something that we should bake into our businesses going forward. And then a bit of a writer's lament. I say at the end of this very intense project, I always sit back and I ask myself a few questions. I'll say, it's good, but is it great? Have I covered everything? Is it even possible to do so? Did I put in enough hours? And then that imposter syndrome thing creeps in. You know, it gets so bad for me that when I receive a compliment on this book, and I receive many, my default thought is, but did they read it? Or are they just impressed with the awesome cover? Look, there's a huge lesson in this for all of us. I think we have to do our best. We have to put in the hours, and the rest is out of our control. I think it's also important that you learn to take a compliment and that you take the time to occasionally compliment yourself. And that brings me to the end of today's presentation. If you are keen to support the initiative by purchasing a book, then you can follow the link on the QR code or visit my website, stokesmedia.co.za. As a thank you to InsureTalk, I will be donating 75 Rand per book sold on the back of this presentation to a children's charity. Just be sure to use the promo code INS-TALK when purchasing the book. Any questions or comments, I really welcome them, and you can reach out to me on gareth@stokesmedia.co.za. And then all that is left is to say thank you to the InsureTalk team for the work you do for insurance education and for this opportunity to punt my book. And thank you one and all for hanging on to the end of today's show. I will hopefully see you in the industry trenches soon. Goodbye.
Thank you, Gareth, and what a huge task done with so much passion and commitment. So we thank you for doing that. And as I said, please get your copy of that book. It's really incredible. So we've reached the end of today. I want to remind you that we've got InsureTalk Live coming up in November, yet it will be in person for a small group of people, up to about 100 people, and the rest of the conference will be online and live as per usual, so no one will miss out. We can't do this without the support of our sponsors. So Bright Insurance Company, it was wonderful to have you here. And to all our other speakers, we wish to thank you for making the time and the effort to deliver such insightful speeches to us here today. It's Heritage Month. We are slowly but surely approaching summer in the Cape. And for those of you who don't live in the Cape, just remember, spring arrives in Cape Town towards the end of October. That's just the way it is. You must please go and celebrate the long weekend if you have that ahead of you. Celebrate the diversity and the joy that we have in this country at this moment in time. And on that note, I'm going to say thank you very much, and I'll see you in October.
CN&CO Events proudly brings you InsureTalk Live. The time has come to close your laptop and join us live. Network with industry leaders and influencers. Engage and learn from A-list speakers. Interact with top exhibitors. Experience the best live entertainment and so much more. Register today. Visit cnandcoevents.com. InsureTalk Live, shaping the future together. Register today.